Chapter 14:12. Yin Tianchu's sudden attack did not seem to be out of Dong Yilao's expectations. He flipped the sea diversion order, and an image of a whale's tail flashed through the air, slapping the blade of light away. Although Yin Tianchu's attack had failed, it had distracted Dong Yilao and prevented him from attacking Qinghu and Lei Di with his full strength. After Yin Tianchu had joined forces with the two of them, he was able to even out the odds on his own side. Under Yin Tianchu's incisive assassination techniques, Dong Yilao was slowly falling into a disadvantageous position. Surrounding the small Huangli Island, there were 5 great adepts, 7 to 8 mid-Dharma adepts, and more than a dozen early Dharma adepts from both the human and demon clans. They were engaged in a battle to the death outside the island. The demon race had originally thought that Huangli Island would be easily breached, but at this moment, it had suddenly become a rock that had lost a few teeth to the demon race. In actuality, after the appearance of 2 great adepts on Jinling's side, the demon race already knew that the demon race would not be able to achieve their full victory in today's battle. However, the demon race still had the advantage in numbers, and Jinling's side was inevitably weakened by the loss of the treasured ship. The demon race had planned for a long time, and naturally, they were not willing to return empty-handed. Even though the high-level combatants had been barely stopped by Jinling's side, there were still thousands of demon cultivators charging towards Huangli Island. Although Huangli Island was said to have more than 1,000 cultivators, in reality, most of them were low-level blood refining and blood condensation adepts. Moreover, most of them were lone cultivators. The only ones who could be relied on were the 300 to 400 cultivators from Jinling and their affiliated forces, and among them, there were only 20 to 30 core forging adepts. If they were to rely on these people, even if the island's protective array was still intact, how long could they last? However, just as the demonic beast army charged towards Huangli Island, a deafening roar shook the entire region of Huangli Island. The low-level cultivators within the demonic beast army, especially the blood condensation realm demonic beast cultivators who had yet to fully take human form, were all affected by the sound waves. Their true essence became sluggish, and they could no longer maintain their flight speed. From afar, it looked like a pot of dumplings had been thrown into the sea. Top-rank demon race bloodline! There were inevitably cultivators of the primeval giant crocodile clan or the flood whale clan among the swarming demon clan army. Naturally, they knew that this kind of roar that could arouse the pressure of the bloodline must be made by the demonic cultivators of the top-ranked demon clan bloodline. In the eastern sea region of Huangli Island, which was also the frontline battlefield where the demon race army attacked Huangli Island most aggressively, an oval-shaped island with a circumference of 300 feet slowly rose from the sea. On the surface of the dark and shiny island, seawater was flowing down. Sky-dominating divine turtle! That roar just now came from this thing. This is the sky-hegemonic divine turtle! How can there be a sky-dominating divine turtle in the North Sea? Could it be that the sky-dominating divine turtle clan is also on Zhiling's side? Some of the demonic beast cultivators recognized the colossal creature in front of them, and cried out in alarm, causing chaos in the demonic beast army once again. However, some of the more alert ones noticed that something was wrong and hurriedly cried out. No, a real sky-dominating divine turtle is probably even bigger than this one. Furthermore, this giant turtle is only at the 9th layer of core forging. Even if it really is a sky-dominating divine turtle clan, we are both top-ranked demon race. Are you saying that my primeval giant crocodile clan is weaker than the sky-dominating divine turtle clan? That's right. My flood whale clan is also a top-ranked demon race. The descendants of Jiao Daoran are not inferior to the sky-dominating divine turtle clan. Let's attack together and tear his turtle shell apart. The appearance of the giant turtle instantly attracted the hatred of many demonic beast cultivators. They knew that the defense of the sky-dominating divine turtle clan was unparalleled in the world. Therefore, hundreds of demonic beast cultivators led by more than 10 core forging cultivators rushed toward the giant turtle. Suddenly, a low laughter came from under the sea. The voice belonged to Lu Degre, who had always been honest. Unexpectedly, the laughter sounded so sultry and lascivious, as if it was mocking these demonic beast cultivators for overestimating their own strength and coming to die. Seeing these demonic beast cultivators rushing forward like a swarm of bees, some of them had already cast various magic arts on the giant turtle, but they could not hurt it at all. At this moment, the previous voice came from the bottom of the sea again. "Wuling Dao soldier formation, rise!" Within a radius of 1 mile around the giant tortoise, the seawater began to boil like a pot of boiling water. 303 feet long fishes suddenly emerged from the bottom of the sea like flying swords, sealing off the sky and the sea within a radius of 1 mile. At the same time, the hundreds of demon cultivators who had rushed up to try and kill Lu Dugui were also trapped by the formation. Lu Dugui's deep voice came from the formation again. "5 elements Dao soldier formation, twist!" The entire formation that was sealed by the water immediately began to rotate. Willing fish with silver light flashing all over their bodies shuttled back and forth in the sealed seawater. Because of their extremely fast speed, they even dyed the blue seawater with a layer of silver light. Screams rose and fell from the formation, causing many demonic beast cultivators who tried to come to help to stop in fear. The Wuling Fish Dao Soldier formation was used by Tianxian sect's Wuling Laozu to fight against Mara's army. It was known as the number 1 Dao Soldier formation in the cultivation world. Unexpectedly, it was used by Jinling outside Huangli Island today. Back then, Lu Ping obtained a few Wuling fish from Tianxian sect's 7th Fan Laozu. After returning to Huangli Island, Lu Dugui was in charge of the reproduction and training of these fish. In 200 years, Lu Dugui had trained 300 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers in the late stage of blood condensation. 6 of them had even reached the early stage of core forging. The Dao soldier formation was finally formed. In the first battle today, the 300 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers only used half a cup of tea's time to kill more than 100 demonic beast cultivators, including more than a dozen core forging demonic beast cultivators. The world's number 1 Dao soldier formation really lived up to its name, shocking the entire demonic beast race with just one attack. Another deep roar came from the bottom of the sea. The Dao soldier formation of Wuling Yu immediately moved forward. The tumbling formation went against the flow of the demon army. None of the demon cultivators who were swept into the formation survived. At most, they could only leave behind a series of screams of different tones. Lu Dugui commanded the Wuling Fish Dao soldier formation to kill from top to bottom in the eastern sea of Huangli Island. More than 500 demonic beast cultivators and more than 30 core forging demonic beast cultivators were swept into the formation. No one could escape from the formation. All the demonic beast cultivators who attacked Huangli Island in the eastern sea were cut in half by the formation. Under the situation where the Dharma adepts were all blocked by Jinling, no demonic beast cultivators dared to fight against the Dao soldier formation. Wherever the formation passed, the demonic beast cultivators all fled. The ferocious power of the Wuling Fish Dao soldier formation was naturally seen by the Dharma adepts of the demonic beast race. However, the Dharma adepts on Jinling's side were like sticky candy, making it impossible for the demonic beast Dharma adepts to fight against the Dao soldier formation. The Dharma adepts of the Wuling Fish Dao soldier formation could naturally see the ferocious power of the Wuling Fish Dao soldier formation. However, the Dharma adepts on Jinling's side were like sticky candy, making it impossible for the demonic beast Dharma adepts to fight against the Dao soldier formation. At the same time, many of the demonic beast cultivators on the island who were originally hesitant about whether to stay or escape suddenly strengthened their confidence to help Jinling. Although Huangli Island was right in front of them, at this moment, in the eyes of the demonic beast cultivators, it was becoming more and more out of reach. At this moment, a ray of light pierced through the void, and a wave of space appeared in the void near Huangli Island. A wave of seawater suddenly exploded from the surface of the sea, forming a water screen. Dongi Laozu, who was fighting with Yin Tianchu and the other two, suddenly made a feint. He had already caught the ray of light in his hand. At the same time, the primordial crocodile great cultivator slapped his palm backwards, slapping the lone eagle that swooped down from midair. At the same time, He pinched the air with his thumb and index finger, and a jade scroll was caught in his hand from the turbulent void. On the water screen that had exploded, a few lines of strange characters suddenly appeared and fell into the eyes of Kong Jing Laozu, who was fighting with Xie Tianyang. The expressions of the three great cultivators changed almost at the same time. Dongyi Laozu was the first to shout. "What are you guys still holding back? If Huangli Island is not destroyed, what's the point of losing soldiers and generals today?" "Bull **********" Kong Jing Laozu shouted. "Dongyi, old man, you are so vicious!" The primordial crocodile great cultivator leaped out of the battle with Sangyu and said in a low voice, "All the demons, retreat quickly. Today, the demons were tricked by the Blue Sea sect. My friends Jinling, why don't we stop here today?" The words of the primordial crocodile great cultivator caused many of the demon cultivators to panic. Many of the demons who were attacking Huangli Island were instantly thrown into confusion and did not know what to do. Fortunately, at this time, Jinling had also received a hint from his Dharma Laozu and did not take the opportunity to kill them. However, there were still many casualties among the demon cultivators. Kong Jing Laozu was instantly enraged and shouted, "Why are you still not retreating? Didn't you hear the order?" At this time, only then did the demon cultivators confirm the order they had heard. Temporarily suppressing the confusion in their hearts, the demon army immediately retreated into the sea like the tide. A long howl was heard and Dongyi Laozu suddenly exploded. A few spells were launched towards the three mid-dharma adepts who were surrounding him, while he himself took the opportunity to break through the encirclement of the three. Then, without looking back, he used the conveyance light to cut through the void and fled in the southwest direction. Behind Dongyi Laozu, a blade of light chased after his body. With a muffled groan, the blade of light dissipated. Dongyi Laozu, who was in the conveyance light, trembled for a while, but he did not stop and disappeared into the horizon. Hearing the two great cultivators of the demon clan plead for peace, Xie Tianyang and Sangyu both smiled and retreated without saying a word. It was clear that the two of them were only here to help and did not want to interfere with Jinling's affairs. At this time, Huangli Island Jinling's side was led by Yin Tianchu. Yin Tianchu guessed that the demon army retreated and Dongyi's escape must have been because both sides had received news that Lu Ping had returned to the East Sea. Next, Jinling would definitely go all out to deal with the Blue Sea sect, so naturally, he would not make enemies everywhere. Thus, he said coldly, "It's good that you stop. I, Jinling, have never wanted to be enemies with the Deep Sea Demon region." A great battle ended prematurely in the Central Plains, and the demon army retreated. While Jinling's side also suffered considerable losses in this battle, but after this battle, Jinling's dominance over the North Sea was almost unshakable. Chapter 14-13. The sea breeze blew gently, and the clouds in the sky rolled back and forth. Dao Xing Laozu and Tian Xiang Laozu sat quietly among the clouds. A pot of fragrant tea was steeped on a wooden table in the middle. Steaming hot steam spread between the two Laozu, concealing their expressions. After a long time, Dao Xing Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "Old friend, you're still better than me after all." Tian Xiang Laozu smiled. He held the teapot's handle with one hand and pressed the lid with the other. He tipped the teapot over, and light green tea poured into the teacup in front of Dao Xing Laozu. The aroma of tea immediately filled the air. Tian Xiang Laozu refilled his cup, and then made a gesture of invitation to Dao Xing Laozu. He didn't say anything about Dao Xing Laozu's words. Dao Xing Laozu, the #1 cultivator of North Sea, showed a rare hint of hesitation in the face of the fragrant tea in front of him. Then, he picked up the teacup in front of him, took a sip of the hot tea, and put it back on the table. Only then did he look at Tian Xiang Laozu again. Tian Xiang Laozu finally said, "Qianling sect should not participate in the affairs of Tsunghai sect." Dao Xing Laozu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Yes." Tian Xiang Laozu nodded, as if he was praising, but also as if he agreed with Dao Xing Laozu's attitude. He then said, "After this matter, Tsunghai sect should know to restrain themselves in North Sea and be punished." Dao Xing Laozu agreed. "Yes." Tian Xiang Laozu slowly raised his eyes and stared at Dao Xing Laozu. North Sea's affairs should be settled by the people of North Sea. Outsiders have no right to interfere, Dao Xing Laozu said without hesitation. Yes. As for Feng Xiudao and Lin Xiqing, Dao Xing Laozu was finally moved. He couldn't help but say, Brother Tianxiang, please. Heavenly Phenomenon Laozu raised his hand to stop Dao Xing from continuing. He said coldly, Someone has to take responsibility for the mistake. Brother Dao Xing, you know what I mean. The blood of Jinling's disciples cannot be shed in vain. Dao Xing Laozu let out a long sigh and closed his eyes, as if he was making up his mind. As for Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, he didn't say anything. Instead, he calmly picked up his teacup and sipped on his tea. After a long time, Dao Xing Laozu suddenly opened his eyes and said with difficulty, As you said, Feng Su Dao will take responsibility for this. Dao Xing Laozu seemed to have expended a great deal of energy to say these words. The moment he finished, Dao Xing Laozu seemed to have aged a few decades. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu seemed to be surprised that Dao Xing Laozu had mentioned Feng Su Dao's name. However, a hint of vigilance flashed across his eyes. He nodded and said, All right. A gentle breeze blew by, and the clouds immediately scattered with the wind. The two old men sitting in the clouds had disappeared at some point, leaving only the fragrance of tea that dissipated with the wind. The news that Lu Ping had returned from the stormy ocean immediately caused a stir in the entire North Sea cultivation world, which had been paying attention to the situation at all times. Using the strength of his body to forcefully resist the spatial storms in the ocean of storms and emerge unscathed, this level of cultivation was something that only those pure young patriarchs who had overcome their third lightning tribulation could do. Based on this level of strength, it was very likely that Yan Jiuxiao, the patriarch of the Fire Phoenix clan, had died by his hands. Unscathed? Lu Ping couldn't help but smile bitterly. If he had returned from the stormy ocean unscathed, how could he have let Wujia Laozu escape from him? At the end of the day, the spatial storm in the stormy ocean had still caused considerable damage to Lu Ping's physical body. After that, he had continuously used the pure yang magic treasure to rush to the Scarlet Mist Island, which also caused Lu Ping's real vitality to be greatly depleted. That was why Wujia Laozu finally had the chance to escape. Before leaving Frost Island, Lu Ping gave a 30-year longevity pill to Tian Shui Laozu. He also asked Tian Qing Laozu to tell Tian Shui Laozu that Jinling was at a critical juncture of becoming a large sect. At this time, who knew how many enemies were plotting against Jinling? Every Dharma plane cultivator could be the key to Jinling's final victory. He wanted Tian Shui Laozu to pull herself together and not be disheartened. Moreover, there were only 4 cultivators left in the first generation of Jinling. No matter what, Tian Shui Laozu could not seek death at this time. However, after arriving at Scarlet Mist Island and joining forces with the cultivators stationed on the island to easily chase away the Xianling sect cultivators who were trying to take advantage of the situation, Lu Ping received a grievous news from Tian Lian, who had rushed over from Tianling Mountain to support him. Not long after the treasured ship entered the stormy ocean, which was around the time Lu Ping arrived at Frost Island, Tian Jiang Laozu finally died of old age and passed away in the weapon forging hall. The remaining 4 first-generation cultivators of Jinling had lost another one. Feng Xiutao was fleeing. The panic and fear on his face had not disappeared since he escaped from Scarlet Mist Island. How well did Jinling hide? How many Dharma plane cultivators did they have in the dark that no one had discovered? Thinking back to the naive young cultivator he had met on Scarlet Mist Island, Feng Xiutao could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. This young mid-Dharma adept was obviously someone who had been hidden away by the Jinling sect and had only focused on his training. He knew nothing about the ways of the world, but his level of training was surprisingly high. Feng Xiutao had been at the mid-Dharma stage for more than 100 years, but he was still unable to gain the upper hand against this young Dharma adept. If not for the fact that this young adept was so inexperienced and that Feng Xiutao was so sly and cunning, Feng Xiutao would have long since been defeated by this young Dharma adept. However, this was not what scared Feng Xiutao. What really shocked him was that just when Xianling's sect had failed to take advantage of the situation on Scarlet Mist Island, Lu Tianping had suddenly appeared on Scarlet Mist Island. This should not have happened. Didn't this person enter the stormy ocean with the ship? How could this be true? Although Feng Xiutao hoped that this was not true, the moment Lu Tianping attacked, Feng Xiutao's last shred of hope was shattered. Without another word, he abandoned the Xianling sect disciples and turned to run. What made Feng Xiutao feel a sense of relief was that Lu Tianping did not chase after him personally. However, what made him extremely angry was that the mid-Dharma adept who had been fighting with him previously had caught up with him from behind, and his speed was not slow at all. After Luan Yu had received the complete inheritance of the Wood Phoenix tribe, his level of practice had improved by leaps and bounds. This was because, although Luan Yu was under the protection of Yanwujiu Laozu, he was still a descendant of the Wood Phoenix tribe. He had never dared to travel alone, even if he was in the territory of the Fire Phoenix tribe. Therefore, he could only spend most of his time in seclusion. Although he knew that even if he became a great medium, there would still be people who would want to take advantage of him. At least he understood that the higher his level of practice, the more likely it was that he would be safe. After returning to the North Sea, his good friend Lu Ping found him a place where he could relax. Here, the entire island was nourished by a strong spirit vein. Not only could he plan and open up a spirit garden as he pleased, but he also met the adepts of his tribe who he had thought were extinct. In this new environment, Luan Yu's level of practice had another breakthrough. He successfully passed the first Thunder trial and reached the mid-Dharma stage. However, just when Luan Yu thought that he had finally found a safe place and was planning to spend the rest of his life on this island, Lu Ping came looking for him again. He had an extremely important request and needed Luan Yu's help. Luan Yu naturally did not hesitate. In order to prevent his identity from being discovered, Lu Ping even gave him the demon transformation bracelet. With such a treasure, Luan Yu naturally did not have to worry about his identity as a Wood Phoenix adept being discovered. However, this opponent on Scarlet Mist Island who was at the same level as him was very difficult to deal with. Luan Yu thought that his ability was better than his opponent's, but this person was extremely cunning. His experience in fighting was many times more than Luan Yu's. This caused Luan Yu to be played around in circles several times. All he had was his ability, but he was unable to defeat his opponent. In the end, it was Lu Ping's appearance that scared his opponent away. This made Luan Yu feel a little guilty. He thought that Lu Ping had helped him enough, but he had never been able to truly help Lu Ping even once. Therefore, without waiting for Lu Ping's instructions, he had already chased after the adept who had invaded the Jinling station on Scarlet Mist Island. Luan Yu had already made up his mind to teach this person a lesson. After this period of fighting with this person, Luan Yu thought that his experience and awareness had been greatly improved. As long as he caught up to the person in front of him, with the bloodline of the Wood Phoenix, he would definitely be able to make things difficult for him. Chapter 14:14. Feng Xiutao fled in panic, but before Luan Yu could catch up to him, the person who appeared in front of him stopped him in his tracks. A blue platform suddenly rose from the calm sea. On the platform, the elegant and graceful sect leader Jinling looked at Feng Xiutao, who stopped in front of her in panic, with a faint smile. "Lu Tianling, it's you!" Feng Xiutao knew he couldn't escape, so he gritted his teeth. Another ray of light approached Feng Xiutao from behind. When the ray of light disappeared, Luan Yu stood behind Feng Xiutao and bowed slightly to Lu Tianling. Lu Tianling also bowed slightly to return the greeting. Lu Tianling knew Luan Yu's identity. Although the Wood Luan clan was on the decline, they were starting to recover with Lu Ping's help. Although they were under Jinling's protection, Luan Yu was now the leader of the Wood Luan clan. From this point of view, Luan Yu's identity was equivalent to Lu Tianling's. Out of gratitude or because of Lu Ping, Luan Yu treated Lu Tianling as a senior, but Lu Tianling still had to respect the Wood Luan clan's leader. However, the simple greeting between the two confused Feng Xiutao. From the way they bowed, it seemed that the young cultivator wasn't Jinling's disciple. Even Lu Tianling was respectful to him. Could it be that Jinling had invited outside help? This thought only flashed through Feng Shutao's mind for a second. Now that the two of them were blocking his way, he could not afford to think about anything else. It was a moment of life and death. Feng Shutao could not afford to think about anything else. Lu Tianling, do you want to start a war between Xianling and Jinling? Feng Shutao's fierce expression was a little funny in Lu Tianling's eyes. Fellow Feng, you think too highly of yourself. Are you sure you can start a war between our two sects with your identity? Of course. Feng Shutao's decisive tone somehow revealed a trace of guilt. Don't forget that Songhai sect is definitely willing to ally with our sect. Huangli Island has probably been massacred by the Fiend army already. If you leave now, the old man will promise to persuade Jinling's teacher to back out of this conflict with Jinling. Lu Tianling let out a long sigh and said, Feng Shutao, you still don't realize the situation you're in? This is already Xianling sect's territory. Why hasn't anyone from Xianling sect come to rescue you? Feng Shutao's expression changed drastically. The young cultivator behind him seemed to be thinking about it as well. Then, as if he had suddenly realized something, he said, Oh, you've been abandoned! Impossible! Feng Shutao opened his mouth to deny it, but the panic on his face betrayed him. However, he still tried his best to find a reason to boost his confidence. Absolutely impossible! I am Xianling sect's Dao Xinglaozu's eldest disciple, the future leader of Xianling sect. How can I be abandoned? Haha, teacher must be on his way to help me. Lu Tianling, if you leave now, you might be able to keep your lives. Otherwise, once teacher arrives, you will definitely die in his hands. Teacher will avenge me, so you must not kill me. Seeing Feng Shutao slowly going crazy, Wan Yu said quietly, He has already broken down. Looking at this person who was once an outstanding second-generation disciple like him falling into madness because of being abandoned by the sect, even though Lu Tianling was the sect master, he couldn't help but sigh. Hearing this, he said softly, If that's the case, clan leader Muluan, please help me free him. Lin Xuqing led the Xianling sect disciples back to Xianling Island, but saw that the two Laozus, Dao Xing and Dao Yen, were already waiting outside Xianling Island. Lin Xuqing was very careful. When he realized that the situation was not right, he immediately led the disciples to retreat. Even so, along the way, he was ambushed by a masked lady. Although this lady was only at the early Dharma stage, her abilities were extraordinary. Her sleeves were like two agile snakes attacking, and the two swords in her sleeves were like the poisonous fangs of agile snakes. Lin Xuqing was sweating profusely from all the attacks she had made. Fortunately, Lin Xuqing was still in the mid-Dharma stage. After the initial panic of being ambushed, he was able to quickly calm down. After defending himself, he slowly launched a counterattack. Bit by bit, he was able to turn the situation around. However, it was beyond his ability to defeat the female practitioner in front of him. However, just as he was being held back, Jinling's cultivators came chasing after him. Although Jinling was suspicious of the masked female practitioner's identity, those who made things difficult for Xianling's sect were naturally allies. Without a word, they fought with the Xianling sect cultivators. That was when the casualties among the Xianling sect cultivators that Lin Xuqing led began to appear. When he finally forced the masked female practitioner to retreat and led the disciples out of the encirclement, he suddenly heard the news that Lu Ping had returned to the North Sea. This shocked Lin Xuqing. Fortunately, most of the Xianling sect disciples he brought with him returned safely. Although many of them were injured, they were still alive. When Dao Xinglaozu saw that Lin Xuqing had returned safely, he could not help but say, It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back. Lin Xuqing hurriedly said, Uncle Master, senior brother Feng is not back yet. He led his people too deep into the sea. It's very likely that he will encounter Lu Tianping or be hunted down. Please save him, Uncle Master. I am willing to lead the way. Unexpectedly, Dao Xinglaozu said, Settle the disciples first, then go to the Black Spirit Hall to discuss the matter later. Lin Xuqing was stunned and quickly said, "But..." However, after Dao Xinglaozi said this, he turned and left. Lin Xuqing panicked and quickly asked Dao Yen Laozi for help. However, Dao Yen Laozi sighed and patted him on the shoulder, saying, "It's good that you can come back." Before senior brother left the island, Tian Xiang blocked his door. After saying this, he also turned and left. Lin Xuqing's expression changed. After a while, he seemed to understand what had happened and murmured to himself, "It's over, it's over." After Junling's treasured ship went west, the North Sea Demon Race, Blue Sea Sect, and Xianling Sect attacked Junling at the same time. The battles were mainly focused on Frost Island, Huangli Island, and Scarlet Mist Island. However, after Junling's treasured ship went west, he killed Blue Sea Sect's Eastern Pole Laozu, forced back the Demon Race's large-scale attack, and at the same time defeated Xianling Sect's attempt to take advantage of Scarlet Mist Island. Junling Sect Master Lu Tianling, Laozu, personally killed Feng Shutao. During this period, the strength that Junling displayed shocked the entire North Sea cultivation world. When Lu Ping crossed the stormy ocean in his physical body and returned, the North Sea sects that were still restless had all ceased their activities. Many sects had even sent messengers to celebrate Junling's promotion to a large sect, including Xianling Sect. They wanted to bury the hatchet with Junling so that they wouldn't be attacked by such a behemoth in the future. Everyone already knew that Junling's power was now established, and the situation of him dominating the North Sea was irreversible. Also, from the strength that Junling displayed, even Fei Ling Sect's reputation in the North Sea was far inferior. However, Junling's operation was far from over. Although the conflict had been resolved by Junling Sect in a more forceful manner, the Blue Sea Sect, as the culprit behind all this, had only lost the great ancestor of the East Pole Sect, who could not be considered a true great cultivator, was clearly not enough to quell Junling Sect's anger. Not long after Lu Ping returned to Frost Island, Junling's third-generation Dharma adept, Tian Xiang, led the sect's cultivators to wipe out the Blue Sea Sect's forces on Frost Island. Junling then announced that all the Blue Sea Sect's profits from the Spirit Stone mines on Frost Island would be frozen. All the Blue Sea Sect's shares on Frost Island would be held by Junling. Junling's control over the large Spirit Stone mines on Frost Island was close to 50%. The same situation happened on Scarlet Mist Island. With Lu Ping personally overseeing the situation, Junling's cultivators almost effortlessly took over the Blue Sea Sect's forces on the island. The suppression of the Blue Sea Sect was far from over. The various forces on the outskirts of the Blue Sea Sect all suffered significant losses. Junling pressed forward, constantly reducing the Blue Sea Sect's forces in the North Sea. Many of the Blue Sea Sect's cultivators who tried to resist were immediately suppressed by Junling. One mid-Dharma adept and one early Dharma adept died at the hands of Yin Tianchu and Luan Yu. In Junling's series of operations, Luan Yu was always at the front line as Junling's vanguard. This leader of the Wood Phoenix tribe, who had grown up under the protection of others, after wearing the demon transformation bracelet to remove the worry of being exposed, had been frantically learning from the experiences of others in the process of fighting. The growth of his abilities could be described as rapid. Even Yin Tianchu himself admitted that if they were to fight head-on, even he did not have the confidence to win against Luan Yu. Earth Blaze Island was a medium-sized island that Junling had taken over from the Blue Sea Sect. It was the 39th medium-sized island that Junling now controlled. It was originally one of the wealthier medium-sized islands under the Blue Sea Sect's jurisdiction, but now it had become the frontline distribution center that Junling used to suppress the Blue Sea Sect. At this time, Yao Tianyong was pacing up and down the island angrily, saying loudly, "I don't understand. With our sect's current abilities, we could easily kill our way into the Blue Sea Sect and completely wipe them out. Why do we still have to suppress them like this? If we don't kill a snake, it will bite us. Don't tell me everyone doesn't understand this. Why do we still keep the Blue Sea Sect? Because Dongi Laozu escaped." Lu Ping's voice sounded from behind Yao Tianyong. "Senior brother, your impatience will not be good for summoning your first lightning tribulation in the future." Yao Tianyong scratched his head and chuckled. I'm also impatient. Let's not talk about this. Junior brother, you said that we can't destroy the Blue Sea sect because of Dong Laozu. What is the reason? Lu Ping said in a low voice. Everyone should have heard about Xiao Baiyu killing LV Taiqing in the Purple Sun Palace. But everyone knows that after leaving the Purple Sun Palace, Xiao Baiyu has almost never returned to Skyrend. Why does everyone think that? Yao Tianyong did not even think and said, He's afraid of being hunted by the Purple Sun Palace. What's there to not know? Lu Ping shook his head and said, No, he's afraid of being destroyed. Chapter 14-15. Back then, Xiao Baiyu calmly left the mountain after killing LV Taiqing. Of course, it was because he was bound by an oath, but the more important reason was that Purple Sun Palace was waiting for Xiao Baiyu to return to the Heaven-Splitting Sword sect, and then they would use all their strength to wipe out the Heaven-Splitting Sword sect. However, Xiao Baiyu did not stay in Skyrend for long. Very soon, he began to wander the cultivation world for more than 200 years. This caused Purple Sun Palace to be cautious and did not dare to launch a sect-exterminating war against Skyrend. And the reason was the restraint of Xiao Baiyu, who appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Imagine an existence comparable to a pure yang staring at you like a venomous snake, waiting for the moment you were careless to suddenly bite you before retreating and waiting for an opportunity to attack. Although Dong Laozu could not compare to Xiao Baiyu, Jinling was not Purple Sun Palace either. Jinling could not withstand the endless harassment of a great cultivator hiding in the dark. Thus, he left Azure Sea Sect behind, leaving it on the verge of being destroyed by Jinling at any time. This was also a deterrent to Dong Laozu. Once Dong Laozu acted recklessly, Jinling could launch a sect-exterminating war at any time. Jinling could already confirm that Dong Laozu was not in Azure Sea Sect. Unless Jinling found traces of Dong Laozu and killed him, Jinling could only do what Purple Sun Palace did to Skyrend back then. Although he could suppress them, he did not dare to launch a sect-exterminating war. Of course, this was not the only reason that made Jinling feel helpless. After all, Jinling had just established his position as the hegemon of the North Sea. If he rashly launched a sect annihilation war at this time, it would definitely cause panic among all the sects and forces in the entire North Sea cultivation world. It might even force them to unite against Jinling. At that time, Jinling would be badly battered. The situation in North Sea had gradually calmed down. Jinling still spared no effort in suppressing the Blue Sea sect, but there was no need for Lu Ping to do the rest himself. After leaving Earthly Blaze Island, Lu Ping hovered above the surface of the sea, as if he was waiting for someone. A moment later, a red cloud floated over, and a masked woman stood gracefully on the cloud, waving at Lu Ping. Lu Ping smiled faintly. He took a step forward and covered an unknown distance in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, he stood on the masked woman's cloud. The fiery red veil slid off the woman's face, and Lu Ping smiled at Qi Lianying and said, "Thank you for stopping Lin Xuqing that day." Qi Lianying rolled his eyes at Lu Ping and said, "I just wanted to scare him. Lin Xuqing was running away, so it didn't make much of a difference whether I stopped him or not." Lu Ping asked again, "How have you been in the North Sea? I'm about to return to Huanli Island, do you want to come with me?" Qi Lianying giggled and said, "I don't dare to go. I don't want your first wife to misunderstand." No matter how one listened to it, these words were full of ambiguity. Before Lu Ping could reveal a strange expression, Qi Lianying couldn't help but laugh. "All right. Are you still traveling in the North Sea or returning to the East Sea? I'll be taking a detour to the Middle Earth in a few days. Do you want to come with me?" Lu Ping thought about it and asked again. Hearing that Lu Ping was going to the Middle Earth, Qi Lianying's eyes lit up, and she said, "I've never been to the Middle Earth, and the North Sea is very boring. I'll return to the East Sea first, and you must call me when you go to the Middle Earth. Otherwise, I'll definitely teach you a lesson." "But why are you going to the Middle Earth?" Lu Ping shrugged and said, "I'll first go to the Heavenly Profound sect to welcome the treasured ship, then go to the Heavenly Moon sect to take a look. After that, I'll be invited to witness a sword duel." "Sword duel?" Qi Lianying was someone who craved for the world to be in chaos. Hearing that there was such a show to watch, she was even more determined to follow Lu Ping to the Middle Earth. But really, now that you've recovered most of your memories and appearance, don't you want to come with me to see Master? Master has always felt guilty about your disappearance all these years. Qi Lianying originally wanted to gloss over it, but seeing Lu Ping's serious expression, she could only say in distress, "See what she says? Hug her head and cry. Moreover, although Aunt Qin doesn't like me all these years, she still saved my life and taught me how to cultivate. I owe her a lot. If I return to the sect, what will Aunt Qin do? Thinking about this, I feel that it's better for me to stay in the East Sea. These years I've gotten used to living freely. I can do whatever I want on Soundwave Island, and if I really return to the Heavenly Spirit Mountain, I'm afraid I won't be able to adapt there." Lu Ping originally wanted to say something, but he suddenly remembered what Mei Tianqin had said to him. One Jiang Tianxian, one Qi Lianying. The grievances of the previous generation were now entangled in a mess. It was not even clear who was right and who was wrong. As for juniors like Lu Ping, they were even more clueless about the intricate relationship between them. Since Qi Lianying didn't want to return to Zhenling, Lu Ping naturally respected her choice. After sending her to the East Sea, Lu Ping also flew towards Huangli Island. "Brother Xie, Brother Sang, I still have to thank the two of you for your help. Huangli Island did not fall into the hands of the demon race again. It's just that I haven't been able to find time to thank the two of you personally these days. Please don't blame me." Lu Ping smiled and cupped his fists towards the two. Xie Tianyang smiled and said, "It's good that you didn't come. The scenery of the North Sea has its own charm. Your arrival has disturbed Brother Sang and me." Sang Yu said, "You and I are sworn brothers, there's no need to be so polite." After the three sat down, Lu Ping then said seriously, "Brother Xie, what is going on with the sword duel between your sect and Skyrand? Brother Xie, are you sure you can win? Brother Xie, I also received an invitation from Skyrand at the foot of Tianling Mountain, and it was personally written by Xiao Baiyu. When the time comes, I'm afraid I won't be able to help Brother Xie." At this time, Sang Yu also said, "Speaking of this, our sect's Feng Lu Laozu also received an invitation from Skyrand. The old man has a deep friendship with Xiao Baiyu. When the time comes, I'm afraid he will stand on Xiao Baiyu's side." Xie Tianyang didn't seem surprised that Lu Ping had received an invitation from Skyrand, and he naturally knew about Feng Lu Laozu's matter. He said in a low voice, "I originally wanted to use Brother Lu's reputation as a witness. I believe Skyrand did this for the same reason. Brother Lu, you don't have to take it to heart. As for Feng Lu Laozu, he is Xiao Baiyu's good friend. Their friendship has nothing to do with us." During the sword duel at Purple Sun Palace, Xiao Baiyu had barged into the Purple Sun Palace alone. He had used words to trick the pure Yang Sword Immortal, LV Taiqing, to take 3 of his attacks as a wager on whether Skyrand would join the Purple Sun Palace. LV Taiqing didn't know it was a trap and was killed by Xiao Baiyu with the heaven opening sword technique. After that, Xiao Baiyu fled to the ends of the world. Purple Sun Palace didn't dare to attack Skyrand for fear of harming the innocent. When Xiao Baiyu appeared again, he was already pure Yang Laozu, one of the few experts in the world. Purple Sun Palace couldn't do anything to him, so they could only place their hopes on the second sword duel between the two. The second sword duel was also the content of the wager between Xiao Baiyu and Purple Sun Palace. Xiao Baiyu killed LV Taiqing by trickery. Although Purple Sun Palace couldn't stop him from leaving due to the wager, it forced Xiao Baiyu to agree to the second sword duel. After listening to Xie Tianyang's story, Lu Ping asked, "I am familiar with the 6 great swordsmen of your sect. Brother Fan, Brother Su, and Brother Xie, but I am not familiar with the other 3. I wonder if Brother Xie has any confidence in this sword duel?" Xie Tianyang smiled bitterly and said, "To be honest, I don't have much confidence. If all 6 of us had advanced to the late Dharma stage, with the help of our sect's secret sword formation, we could have the upper hand in this battle. Now only Big Brother Yan Nanfei, second Brother Fan Mingjie, and I have passed the second thunder trial. Third brother Su Jin is at the final stage of advancing. I don't know if he can reach the late Dharma stage in time for the sword duel. However, even if he succeeds, I'm afraid he won't have time to stabilize his training. As for fourth brother Guo Wanqing and fifth brother Tian Bulian, they won't be able to advance to the late Dharma stage in time for the sword duel. Lu Ping's expression was solemn. He had seen the sword techniques of Xie Tianyang and the others. Although he didn't know how strong Feng Lifeng was, he guessed that he wouldn't be too far off from Fan Mingjiet and Xie Tianyang. Although the three of them had already advanced to the late Dharma stage, with Lu Ping's current abilities, he could estimate the limits of their abilities. And he had also seen Xiao Baiyu's amazing sword techniques before. In fact, Lu Ping secretly thought that Xiao Baiyu might still be holding back. If that was the case, the key would depend on whether Su Jin could advance to the late Dharma stage and the power of the secret sword formation of Purple Sun Palace that Xie Tianyang had mentioned. The situation in the North Sea had already stabilized. Counting the days, the ship should have left the Ocean of Storms and was about to reach the coast of the Tianxian sect. The three of them immediately left the North Sea and took a detour to the East Sea to head towards Central Plains. However, in the Fallen Mystery Land, Lu Ping brought along Qi Lianying, who had been waiting for a long time. Qi Lianying was dressed in red and had a red veil covering her face, but it still couldn't hide her beautiful figure and wild aura. This made Xie Tianyang and Sang Yu secretly praise Lu Ping's luck with women. The four of them went their separate ways when they reached Central Plains. Lu Ping and Qi Lianying had to go to the Tianxian sect to receive their own ship, while Xie Tianyang returned to Purple Sun Palace to report on his mission. Sang Yu also seemed to have important matters to attend to. After saying goodbye to the two, Lu Ping and Qi Lianying headed north. Qi Lianying's beautiful eyes darted around as she said, "When the Purple Sun Palace and Xiao Baiyu have a sword duel, are you really not going to help?" Lu Ping's expression was solemn as he said, "I'm not sure. This time, I'm afraid that the two of them are not just dueling for the sake of the bet. There must be some deeper reason behind it. When the time comes, we can only act according to the circumstances. However, when we go to the Tianxian sect this time, we should be able to meet Seven Fans Laozu. Maybe we can learn something from him." Qi Lianying asked again, "With your current strength, what will you do if you go up against Xiao Baiyu?" Lu Ping was stunned for a moment and said, "I have no chance of winning." However, Lu Ping was also a little unconvinced. He said, "If I advance to the pure yang stage, then Xiao Baiyu may not be my match." Qi Lianying giggled crisply. Lu Ping's arrival attracted the attention of the Tianxian sect from top to bottom. They sent Qingli Laozu to personally welcome him. This was already a sign that they were treating Lu Ping as a sect master and a grand master. The current Lu Ping's status was different from before, especially after he crossed the stormy ocean with his physical body. The cultivation world was even more certain that Lu Ping was the culprit behind Yan Jiuxiao's death. As for Lu Ping and Jinling, their status in the cultivation world naturally rose along with it. Chapter 14-16. Over the years, the scourge of Mara along the coast of the Middle Earth had not been eradicated. The reason was that the major sects of the Middle Earth had encountered major incidents in succession over the years, so the eyes of the Middle Earth's practitioners had never paid attention to Mara, who was wreaking havoc along the coast. In addition, the sea was vast and boundless, and Mara's army was wandering everywhere, making it difficult for people to track them. Although the various sects along the coast had the intention to encircle and annihilate them, they could not capture the traces of Mara's army. Naturally, they could not completely eliminate the scourge of Mara. There was another more important reason, which was the threat of the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace had always sought a place in the Middle Earth that could be used to establish a foundation for their power to penetrate deep into the Middle Earth. However, this attempt had always been strongly resisted by the various sects along the coast led by the Tianhua sect. The two sides even often had conflicts over the coastal areas. In the past, the Tianhua sect had the secret support of Jiushuan Tower, Wishing School, Skyward Pavilion, and other holy lands. But now, The Jiuquan Tower had been greatly damaged by Mara's army and had to announce the closure of the mountain. Several pure Yang practitioners of Wuxing school had also died, which caused public anger in the Middle Earth. And Skyward Pavilion had somehow provoked the tyrannical Tortoise clan of the South Sea. In the past, the forces behind the Tianhui sect had no time to care about other things due to various reasons. This was originally the best time for the Crystal Palace to take advantage of the opportunity to expand. However, at this time, the disaster of Mara broke out along the coast. Under the deliberate connivance of the Tianhui sect and other sects, they happened to isolate the exit of the East Stormy Ocean from the Middle Earth. The Tianhui sect deliberately shrank, so the Mara's army all went to the various strongholds established by the Crystal Palace in the sea. Instead, the Crystal Palace had to face all the Mara's army that was wreaking havoc on the sea and had to stop the expansion. This was also where the Tianxian sect and the Heavenly Moon sect had always been at odds. The Tianxian sect did not directly face the pressure of the Crystal Palace, so they needed to eradicate the hidden danger of Mara on the surface of the sea. However, the Heavenly Moon sect needed the existence of Mara's army to form a natural barrier against the expansion of the Crystal Palace's power. However, the sea was vast and the north and south were the same. Even if the Heavenly Profound sect cleared out the Mara on their own sea, there would still be the Heavenly Moon sect's Mara army on the coast. Similarly, one of the most important reasons why the Tianxian sect allied with Jinling was that they wanted to join forces with Jinling to completely eliminate the hidden danger of Mara in the sea. However, in this way, the number of Mara in the sea area of the Tianxian sect would be divided, which would give the Crystal Palace an opportunity to take advantage of. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Moon sect immediately came to the Tianxian sect after hearing that Jinling was about to become a large sect. The Yulin River meandered to the west. Not far from where the Tianxian sect was located was the estuary of the second largest river in the Central Plains. Back then, Lu Ping followed the meandering Yulin River to the east, and finally comprehended the mystery of the Great River flows east sword technique at the estuary of the Yulin River. He separated this great sword technique from the all rivers in the sea sword technique, and laid the foundation for it to become a supreme sword technique by itself. Now that Lu Ping once again came to the estuary of the Yulin River, the scene he saw was naturally different from that time when he was still a minor repairs cultivator of the forging core. Green and red light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, and he saw a group of fish at the estuary of the Yulin River. This group of fish was divided into dozens of groups, always cruising back and forth in the waters of dozens of miles around the estuary, but never leaving the estuary. Qingli Laozi smiled and said, "This is the Wuling fish Dao soldiers left by Wuling Laozi. For thousands of years, this group of Dao soldiers has been guarding the estuary of the Yulin River, so that the Demon Clan in the Yulin River and the Demon Clan in the sea have never cooperated with each other. At the same time, this is the fundamental reason why Mara from the sea has never invaded the coast. Back then, Wuling Laozi used 3,000 Wuling fish Dao soldiers to block the attack of 100,000 Mara's army, and became famous. Since then, these Wuling fish Dao soldiers had been guarding here. Back then, when Lu Ping gained enlightenment on swordsmanship here, he practiced his swordsmanship without fear. But he didn't know that under his feet, there were hidden dangers that could take his life at any time. These 3,000 Dao soldiers were far more powerful than when Lu Dagui was defending against the Demon Clan's attack on Huangli Island. The 300 Wuling fish Dao soldiers that Lu Ping trained were very messy. Most of the Dao soldiers were in the late blood condensation stage, and only a few were barely in the core forging stage. But these 3,000 Dao soldiers were all in the late blood condensation stage, and nearly 100 of them were in the core forging stage. Compared to these 3,000 Dao soldiers, Lu Ping's 300 Wuling fish Dao soldiers were just a motley crew. So this battle will be led by the Wuling fish Dao soldiers? Qingli Laozi nodded and said, "Indeed. This time, the four sects, your sect, Heavenly Moon sect, and Carefree Pavilion will work together to suppress the Mara's army on the sea in a specific area. Then, with the help of Mo Luo's power, we can drive the Crystal Palace's forces back to the East Sea. But it's not like there won't be any problems." "Eh?" Lu Ping looked at Qingli Laozu in surprise and said, "What?" Qingli Laozu smiled unnaturally and said, "You also know that Xiao Baiyu and Senior Qi Fan are close friends. He has seen through this, so Skyrend also wants to interfere." Lu Ping's expression froze. The four sects had planned this for a long time. Jinling had obtained the transfer point of their allies and the large sects, so their status was recognized. Heavenly Xian sect solved the problem at the sea. Heavenly Moon sect might suffer a greater loss, but they could completely eradicate the hidden danger of the Crystal Palace's expansion. As for Carefree Pavilion, they already had an unresolvable hatred with the Crystal Palace, and they also had a close relationship with Heavenly Moon sect. As long as they could make the Crystal Palace suffer losses, they would not shirk their responsibility. The final result of this matter could be said to be a happy ending. However, at this time, Skyrend wanted to interfere. It was not that Skyrend's participation would affect the cooperation of the four sections. After all, Skyrend was an old sect that was not weaker than Heavenly Xian sect. With their participation, this matter would definitely be easier. However, with the strength of the four sects, it was completely possible for Skyrend to participate at this time only for this matter. As expected, Qingli Laozu continued to say, "What Xiao Baiyu means is that Jinling, Heavenly Xian, and Heavenly Moon sects' cooperation is enough to suppress Mara's army from the sea and wait for an opportunity to expel the Crystal Palace's forces on the sea. At this time, Skyrend and Carefree Pavilion can completely take the opportunity to block the entrance of the East Sea Storm Ocean from behind and block the Crystal Palace's forces to the west of the Storm Ocean from retreating." Lu Ping suddenly gasped and said, "Does he mean to destroy all the forces of the Crystal Palace in the west of the Storm Ocean?" Qingli Laozu smiled bitterly and said, "I'm afraid so." Lu Ping couldn't help but ask, "Isn't he afraid that the Crystal Palace will be angry and take revenge?" Although the four sects expelled the forces of the Crystal Palace in the name of encircling and suppressing Mara, they were also offending the Crystal Palace. However, after all, they had the reason to exterminate Mara. The forces of the Crystal Palace were only expelled but not annihilated. The two parties didn't completely fall out with each other. What's more, the four sects were also not weak. Even if the Crystal Palace wanted to do something, it would have to weigh whether it was worth it or not. It could be said that this time the four sects joined hands to step on the bottom line of the Crystal Palace. But if they really acted like Skyrend, it would be a complete declaration of war with the Crystal Palace. At that time, even if the Crystal Palace was concerned about the strength of the four sects, they couldn't remain indifferent when their practitioners were slaughtered. What's more, in the face of such a huge sect that had been passed down since the beginning of the world by the seventh patriarch, no one knew what other trump cards they were hiding. Thinking of the heaven and earth wine tripod at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain and the heaven-covering feather fan above Nine Mysteries Tower, Lu Ping still shuddered with fear. Xiao Baiyu thinks that this is the best time to weaken the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace has been spreading around these years, which also scattered the strength of the sections. It's a good time to destroy them one by one. Destroy them one by one? That's the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping couldn't help but ask. Then what does Senior Qi Fan mean? Qingli Laozu also showed a helpless expression and said, Senior Qi Fan didn't agree at first, but after the secret talk with Xiao Baiyu, he seemed to be a little hesitant. Also, Full Moon Laozu of the Heavenly Moon sect also seemed to be a little undecided. This time, since your sect has come to the east, Xiao Baiyu also wants to meet you. Lu Ping said in surprise. Xiao Baiyu is in Tianxian City now? Why does he want to see me? This matter is decided by the elders of the sect. It's not something that a junior can decide. Hearing this, Qingli Laozi smiled and said, Young friend, there's no need to belittle yourself. With your current position, even if you don't interfere with the matters of the sect, your words and actions have an incomparably great influence on the sect. If I were Xiao Baiyu, I would also find you at the first instance. Lu Ping smiled helplessly and said, But this time, the decision is made by Martial Uncle Jiang Tianlin of our sect. I will respect Martial Uncle's opinion. Qingli Laozi smiled and didn't comment on Lu Ping's words. That's right, Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and said, "What is Xiaoyao Pavilion thinking? If they really do this, Xiaoyao Pavilion and Skyrend, who are in the East Sea, will instead bear the brunt of the Crystal Palace's revenge." Qingli Laozi said helplessly. "That's the strange thing. This time, Xiaoyao Pavilion is on Xiao Baiyu's side. It's also because of Xiaoyao Pavilion's support that Xiao Baiyu is so confident to persuade the other three sections." Lu Ping was stunned. However, after thinking about it, it couldn't be more normal. With the opposition between Xiaoyao Pavilion and the Crystal Palace, even with this scheme, the relationship between the two parties wouldn't get worse. As for revenge, Xiaoyao Pavilion had been suppressed by the Crystal Palace for many years. Now that there was a chance to make the Crystal Palace suffer a great loss, Xiaoyao Pavilion naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. In a sense, this time, Xiao Baiyu's proposal was probably the one that really hit it off with Xiaoyao Pavilion. Chapter 14-17. Xiao Baiyu looked at Lu Ping and smiled. "Is this the third time we've met?" Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "More than that." Xiao Baiyu smiled and said directly, "Although I have already overestimated your growth, it seems that it is still far from enough. Your rise is just like the sect you belong to, it is beyond everyone's expectations." Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything. Xiao Baiyu did not mind and continued, "Everyone can see that Jinling will rise in the North Sea. But no one would have thought that Jinling would have such a terrifying number of high-level adepts. If it wasn't for the fact that Jinling does not have a strong enough foundation, that the time it took for it to rise is too short, and that the distribution of Dharma adepts in each generation is not reasonable, just based on the number of Dharma adepts in your sect, it is already enough to be mentioned in the same breath as Skyrend, the Tianxian sect, and the Tianwei sect." On this point, Xiao Baiyu was very much in line with Jinling's reality. Currently, there were only 3 adepts left in the first generation of Jinling, and the number of second-generation Dharma adepts had already reached 9. In the third generation, the number of Dharma adepts in Jinling had surged. With Lu Tianping and Yin Tianchu as the leaders, there were now more than 15 adepts who had reached the Dharma stage, and this number was still growing. Furthermore, these were just the adepts that Jinling had cultivated. If the outer sect elders such as Xianglu, Lei Di, and Qing Hu were added, the number of Dharma adepts in Jinling would be even larger. It was no wonder that after this promotion battle, the strength that Jinling had displayed had shocked the entire world of practitioners. In reality, Jinling had already realized this problem. Although the appearance of a large number of Dharma adepts could make Jinling flourish for a while, such a large group of Dharma adepts would definitely take up a large amount of training resources. Moreover, the North Sea training world was a barren place, which made the already tight situation even more difficult, to the point where it would affect the training of the younger generation. After all, the legacy of a sect was a long-term plan. Such an uncontrolled expansion of the sect's strength would definitely cause the younger generation of disciples to become weaker due to the lack of sufficient training resources. The truly strong sects would control the number of Dharma adepts in the sect very well. Perhaps there were many adepts who had the potential to advance to the Dharma stage, but they would always make them compete with each other and pick out the more outstanding disciples to train. Although this might reduce the number of Dharma adepts that the sect might have, it could save a large amount of training resources to train the younger generation of disciples. At the same time, a portion of the training resources could be stored away in case of emergencies. Of course, there might be some disciples who had their own opportunities. Originally, they had been quietly abandoned by the sect, but they had managed to advance through their own hard work. This way, the sect would not have to expend too much in order to gain a powerful disciple. This was something that any sect would welcome. Only in this way could a sect be able to carry on a good succession with limited training resources. At the same time, when the sect was faced with a crisis, it could also train a large number of Dharma adepts in a short period of time to help the sect overcome the crisis. Now that the 4th generation of Jinling's adepts had gradually grown up, the more outstanding ones had already begun to enter the late core forging stage. The matter of the fourth generation of adepts advancing to the Dharma stage had also begun to be brought up more and more by the sect. Although the fourth generation of adepts did not have as many outstanding adepts as the third generation, there were still many disciples who were looked upon favorably by the sect. However, Lu Ping had already received news from the head of the sect that the sect was only prepared to select 15 to 20 of the most outstanding adepts from the fourth generation of disciples to become direct disciples. They would compete with each other and strengthen their foundations. Then, they would select 10 to 12 disciples who stood out from the rest to train and help them condense their Dharma power. It could be said that the head of the sect, Lu Tianling, had an extremely accurate grasp of Jinling. She did not bite off more than she could chew just because the sect's strength was expanding, especially because of the explosion of the third generation of Dharma adepts. Instead, she was extremely pragmatic in reducing the number of fourth-generation adepts who could advance to the Dharma stage. The entire process was estimated to take 50 to 100 years, and the fourth generation of Jinling's disciples would begin to advance to the Dharma stage. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Thank you for your advice, Senior. However, Senior Xiao has come to see me this time only to talk about some plans for the development of the sect, right?" Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "Of course not. I'm just saying this because I feel that your sect is an ambitious sect. You shouldn't just limit your vision to a corner of the North Sea, but should look at the entire world of training." Lu Ping did not become complacent because of Xiao Baiyu's words. Instead, he said calmly, "Ideals can't be separated from reality. It is already difficult for Jinling to maintain its position in the North Sea, and I'm afraid that outside of the North Sea, there are many things that we don't have the strength to do." The admiration in Xiao Baiyu's eyes deepened, and he said, "This is your sect underestimating itself. With your sect's current strength, you have a lot of potential in the world of training. Also, as the saying goes, the tree may desire peace, but the wind will not stop. If Jinling wants to have a stable place in the North Sea, it will also need the consent of others." Lu Ping's expression changed, and he said in a low voice, "What do you mean, Senior?" Xiao Baiyu had long expected that Lu Ping would ask such a question, and as soon as his voice fell, he answered, "There are two meanings. The first is in Jinling itself, and the second is in you." Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and said, "I'd like to hear the details." Xiao Baiyu said with fervor and assurance, "Let's talk about your sect first. I have also heard about what happened after your sect's treasure ship sailed to the west this time. Although the process was dangerous, in fact, your sect and little friend Lu already had a well-thought-out plan. Whether it is the Tsunghai sect, the Xianling sect or the Taishian sect, they are just clowns who can't achieve anything. Even if the Beihai sect sends out all its forces, the final result is just a scare but no danger." Lu Ping could not help but ask, "What is Senior trying to say? Doesn't your sect think that everything is too easy?" "Easy?" Lu Ping thought for a while and said, "Senior, you mean?" Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "Yes, it is the Crystal Palace. If the Crystal Palace intervenes this time, let alone whether your sect can succeed, even if you succeed, how heavy a price will you have to pay?" Lu Ping was a little unconvinced and said, "The reason why our sect sets sail at this time is that the Crystal Palace has no time to attend to other things this time." "Of course, it is because the Crystal Palace has no time to attend to other things. But what about when the Crystal Palace has time to spare?" Lu Ping said, "You mean that the Crystal Palace will return to the North Sea?" Xiao Baiyu said matter-of-factly, "Unless we can make the Crystal Palace retreat in the face of difficulties, otherwise, with the nature of the Crystal Palace, they will think that the entire overseas cultivation world belongs to them." Seeing that Lu Ping was silent, Xiao Baiyu continued, "Now, in the overseas cultivation world, other than the Crystal Palace, there are 9 other large sections. I don't know if you have noticed that other than the Wind Thunder Island and the Purple Talisman Pavilion, which are vassals of the Crystal Palace, only the Jinling family is a local sect of the overseas cultivation world." Lu Ping was stunned for a moment before he heard Xiao Baiyu continue. "Be it the 4 major sects of the Southern Sea, or the Eastern Sea's Skyrend and Carefree Pavilion, when traced back to their origins, they were all driven overseas to rebuild their sections. As for the local sects in the overseas cultivation world, Flying Spirit Island was destroyed 4,000 years ago. You've personally witnessed the collapse of the Northern Alliance, and the Southern Sea doesn't even have a single local major sect. As the largest local sect in the Southern Sea, the Yulin sect has long reached the qualifications to be promoted to a major sect, but it has never built a treasured ship. It was only when it hooked up with the Yuan clan and wanted to promote its sect that it unexpectedly ran into the conflict between the four major sects of the Southern Sea and the Skyward Pavilion. The Bagui clan also interfered in the middle. The stormy ocean from the Southern Sea to the Central Plains was completely sealed off, so naturally, the promotion of the Yulin sect was impossible. Although the Junling sect has successfully promoted to a major sect, I'm afraid that the crisis of your sect has just begun. After Xiao Baiyu finished speaking, Lu Ping was silent at the side, but the affection on his face was changing rapidly. Obviously, Lu Ping was digesting Xiao Baiyu's previous words in his mind. Xiao Baiyu's words might be exaggerated, especially the destruction of the Northern Alliance and failing sect. Perhaps it was not the Crystal Palace's purge of the overseas local sections. From the information that Lu Ping had, especially the destruction of failing sect, there might be other hidden reasons. However, it was also true that the Crystal Palace was the main force behind the destruction of these sections. From this point of view, what Xiao Baiyu said was also true. From the behavior of Xiao Baiyu, perhaps Skyrend had also felt the pressure from the Crystal Palace, so he spared no effort to unite the overseas sects and coastal sects to resist the Crystal Palace. After a long time, Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief and said, "Senior, there is one more reason about me that I haven't told you." Xiao Baiyu couldn't help laughing and said, "You and I are the well-deserved best among the practitioners of the same generation. Even when I was like you, I might not have such achievements as you. Even I have to live outside for 200 years. Little friend, do you think the Crystal Palace will let you go? Xiao Baiyu and Skyren could cause such a big movement. If there is another Lu Tianping and Jinling, the overseas cultivation world will be in chaos. Danger always needs to be nipped in the bud." Lu Ping smiled and said, "So, instead of waiting for the opponent to come and slaughter us, why not take the initiative to attack?" Xiao Baiyu suddenly smiled. He knew that Lu Ping had probably already agreed with his approach. The two changed the topic at the same time. Lu Ping originally wanted to ask him about the sword duel in Xiang Palace, but unexpectedly, Xiao Baiyu didn't care about it. Instead, he showed a trace of seriousness on his face and said carefully, "That day at the Qingming River, although I invited Lu Xiaoyu and was rejected once, this time I still want to invite you to join us again. That day, your cultivation was not good, but now you are qualified to be on equal footing with us, so I hope you can consider it seriously." This time, Lu Ping didn't refuse immediately like before. Instead, he looked at Xiao Baiyu seriously and asked, "What are you planning?" Chapter 14-18. After Xiao Baiyu left, Lu Ping sat quietly in the quiet room that Tianxian sect had arranged for him in Tianxian City for a day and a night. Xiao Baiyu told Lu Ping everything about their organization, which also meant that Lu Ping had finally agreed to join them. Ambition was really a wonderful thing. When he heard it from others, he always felt that it was inconceivable, unbelievable, and fantastic. However, when he decided to participate in it himself, and the seed in his heart was ignited, he realized that everything was so tempting, and the prospects were so bright, and the future was so beautiful. An ambitious person would never be afraid of challenges. On the contrary, every time a challenge came, it would stimulate his ambition. When his ambition was big enough, he would even take the initiative to accept challenges, and even take the initiative to look for challenges. Although some of the details of the plan that Xiao Baiyu revealed seemed extremely crazy, Lu Ping had to admit that these ideas were supported by sufficient reasons, and there were reasons for success. Once the plan was successful, it would be a great opportunity for these participants and the forces behind them. Therefore, Lu Ping could not help but be tempted. After a day and a night, when Lu Ping opened his eyes, his bright eyes made Lu Ping's temperament change. His complacent demeanor naturally brought a temperament that made people believe, worship, and even submit to him. Since he wanted to take this path, he would start by challenging the authority of the Crystal Palace in the overseas cultivation world. After walking out of the quiet room, Xiahou Wushang, who was waiting for Lu Ping outside, looked at Lu Ping and was stunned. Lu Ping said with a smile, "Brother Xiahou, I can't stand you staring at me like this." Xiahou Wushang could not help laughing and said, "Brother Lu seems to be different from before." "Oh?" Lu Ping asked. "What's the difference?" Xiahou Wushang shook his head and said, "I can't tell. It seems that some places are very similar to Martial Granduncle Seven Fans, but I can't tell at all." Lu Ping laughed soundlessly and asked, "Has our sect's treasured ship arrived?" Xiahou Wushang said, "Yes, the secret outpost set up by our sect overseas has received a message from Jiang Tianlin Laozu. The treasure ship has sailed out of the storm ocean and encountered a wave of Mara's army. After repelling Mara's army, the treasure ship is now anchored at the entrance of the storm ocean." Lu Ping perked up and said, "So we can start?" Xiahou Wushang nodded and said, "There's no time to lose. After Mara's army is blocked at the entrance of the storm ocean, it is very likely that they will immediately counterattack. Martial Granduncle Dong Lu has already gathered 3,000 willing fish Dao soldiers at the mouth of the Yulan River to attack first. Our sect has also made preparations and will set off soon." The Tianxian sect's speed was fast enough, but it was naturally much slower than Lu Ping alone. Although the 3,000 willing fish Dao soldiers controlled by Dong Lu Laozu were fast enough in the sea, they encountered Mara 100 miles out of the mouth of the river. Even though it was only a small group of Mara, they were crushed by the 3,000 Dao soldiers' formation before they could cause any waves. After that, the Dao soldier formation encountered more and more Mara, and the advancing speed inevitably slowed down. Although Lu Ping was in a hurry to cross the sea and meet up with the ship near the stormy ocean, he still paid Forefather Dong Lu a visit when he passed by the Dao soldier formation. Then, he observed the true power of the willing fish Dao soldier formation. Under the cover of Lu Ping's divine thoughts, he could see that under the control of Dong Lu Laozu, the 3,000 willing fish Dao soldiers were divided into 10 shoals, and each shoal had 300 willing fish that formed a small Dao soldier formation. The 10 shoals were lined up horizontally, and each shoal was about 5 kilometers apart. The 10 shoals could cover an area of 100 kilometers. If they encountered a small group of Mara, a single shoal was enough to deal with them. If they encountered a larger shoal, there would immediately be shoals coming to their aid. Unless they encountered the main force of Mara's army, the 3,000 willing fish Dao soldiers could go on a rampage in the sea. The storm ocean near the Heavenly Xian sect happened to be in the Northeast Sea. After the Dao soldier formation set off from the mouth of the Yulan River, it took a diagonal line from the southwest to the northeast. The Heavenly Xian sect cultivators who set off later followed the path opened by the Dao soldier formation, and only left a small group of cultivators to advance north to kill Mara. Most of the Heavenly Xian sect cultivators headed south and began to drive the rampaging Mara army south. The key to completing this entire process was that Jinling's treasure ship could guard the entrance to the storm ocean. If they could not guard the entrance, once the Mara army on the sea was driven away by the Heavenly Xian sect, a considerable number of them would try to retreat into the storm ocean to hide. If that happened, the meticulously planned plan of the 4 major sects would be greatly disrupted. After witnessing the true power of the willing fish Dao soldier formation, Lu Ping passed the Dao soldier formation and rushed to the entrance of the storm ocean. In reality, it was not just Lu Ping. Most of the high-level cultivators of the Heavenly Xian sect above the Dharma phase had already passed the line of defense set up by the ordinary cultivators and rushed into the depths of the sea to find the high-level Mara to drive away. During this period, Lu Ping also encountered some Mara's obstruction. However, for Lu Ping at this time, even the appearance of an Azura might not have much effect on him. However, whenever he encountered a high-level Mara, Lu Ping would often show his strength to scare them away. Then, he would pretend to chase them and drive them to the south. These high-level Mara were the main force that the four major sects used to plot against the Crystal Palace. They could not be lost at this time. However, after passing the Dao Soldier Formation and going more than 100 miles into the sea, Lu Ping's body flashed with a golden light. Then, he turned into a pool of water and disappeared into the sea. Lu Ping's cultivation of the water transformation technique had reached an extremely high level. In the sea, it was difficult for even the water Azura to find his trace. However, if he wanted to fly extremely fast in the water, he had to use the body water transformation talisman. The storm ocean was about 3,000 miles from the Middle-earth continent. After Lu Ping performed the water transformation technique, it didn't take long for him to reach the sea near the storm ocean. The violent spiritual chi shock forced Lu Ping to stop the conveyance light and rise from the sea. Then, he saw several miles away, about thousands of Mara's army, led by 2 Azuras, 7 or 8 Jade Mara, and more than 10 Blood Mara, had surrounded the treasure ship. Then, they charged at the Jinling treasure ship one after another. Just hundreds of feet behind the treasure ship, in the space entrance of the storm ocean, the violent shock caused by the battle was like a wrinkled lake surface, with circles of ripples. Although the Mara's army's offensive was fierce, it never made any progress in the face of the treasure ship. Instead, the various magical powers and spells on the treasure ship caused a large number of casualties. However, in the face of the Mara's army, which had an absolute advantage and was guarded by 2 Azuras, although Jinling could use the treasure ship to defend, he couldn't beat the Mara's army back. At this time, the treasure ship couldn't move in order to guard the entrance of the storm ocean behind it. Therefore, it could only fight head-on with the Mara's army. However, in the face of Mara's fearless attack, casualties were inevitable despite the treasure ship's defensive formation. In particular, when the 2 Azuras attacked, they would often hide among the attacking Mara's army, making it difficult for the cultivators on the treasure ship to detect them. Then, they would suddenly attack and pierce through the treasure ship's defensive formation. Before the formation's protective shield could be repaired, the Jade Mara or Blood Mara would take the opportunity to kill the Jinling cultivators on the treasure ship with great tacit understanding. When Lu Ping saw the 2 Azuras appear, he was surprised. Lu Ping had come fast enough, but he didn't expect that the Mara's army in the sea area of the Heavenly Mystery sect would gather such a powerful force to counterattack in such a short time. Was this a coincidence, or was there something unexpected? Lu Ping didn't have time to think too much about it. At this time, although Jinling's situation could be defended for a short time, it would be very bad if it dragged on. Lu Ping used the water transformation technique to hide himself in the seawater and quickly approached the battle. When he was only a few hundred feet away from the battle, one of the 2 Azuras seemed to suddenly notice something and suddenly turned to look at the sea. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly burst out of the seawater. The sword of true spirit in his hand immediately turned into 6 flood dragons and rushed toward the Mara's army that was 100 feet away. The first move Lu Ping made was the battle formula of the heaven-opening sword technique that he had mastered so far. The 6 sword light flood dragons did not attack the 2 Azuras. Instead, they rushed toward the 6 Jade Mara's army from different directions. This was beyond the expectations of the 2 Azuras. With Lu Ping's current power, the heaven-opening sword technique was not to be underestimated. The 6 flood dragons went around the 2 Azuras and went straight for the Jade Mara. It immediately caused chaos in the Mara's army. The 2 Azuras quickly tried to stop them, but they only had time to break 2 of the flood dragon sword lights. They could not do anything to the remaining 4 flood dragon sword lights. A Jade Shura that was targeted by the sword light reached out and picked up 2 big Shuras. She threw them at the sword light flood dragons, and then they were swallowed by the sword light flood dragons. However, this Jade Shura was able to escape the heaven-opening sword technique's attack. However, the remaining 3 Jade Devils were not so lucky. 2 of them were killed by the horned light serpent on the spot, while the last one survived. However, its primordial spirit treasure and one of its legs were chewed to pieces by the horned light serpent. The Jinling cultivators had clearly seen Lu Ping's sword techniques. When Lu Ping killed 2 jade demons and severely injured a jade Shura, everyone on the ship suddenly cheered. Just as Lu Ping relieved the pressure on the ship, an Azura roared and rushed toward Lu Ping. Chapter 14-19. Only one? I'll use you to test how far I've progressed in my training. Facing the charging Azura, Lu Ping wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he was overjoyed. The sword of true spirit trembled and 9 sword rays flew out from the sword. The 9 sword rays condensed the spiritual energy in the air and formed 9 Jiao dragons that bared their fangs and brandished their claws. The 9 Jiao dragons stood in different directions and vaguely formed a huge net that enveloped the charging Azura. Because the Azura had a companion spiritual treasure that was almost equivalent to a pure Yang spirit treasure, the Azura's true ability was often between a late Dharma adept and a pure Yang adept. Previously, when Lu Ping was at the mid-Dharma stage, he could kill a heavily injured Azura in a one-on-one fight. Now that he had advanced to the late Dharma stage, Lu Ping's ability had increased by several times. Naturally, it was not difficult for him to defeat an uninjured Azura. The only thing that Lu Ping cared about was how long it would take him to defeat it. However, Lu Ping seemed to have already expected this to happen. Just as the Azura broke free, the sword of true spirit had already transformed into a raging river of swords that rolled towards it. This kind of supreme power that was so powerful that it covered the sky and the earth often had an obvious characteristic, which was that it was impossible to dodge. When faced with the impact of such a power, one could only face it head-on. Of course, there were times when such a power would inevitably decrease its power because the area it covered was too large. However, this also depended on who was using it. Although this Azura was also a water Azura, in the face of the mighty and invincible aura of the Great River Flow's E-Sword technique, it was not easy for it to escape even though it was able to protect itself. This was the effect Lu Ping wanted. After performing the Great River E-Sword technique, the true vitality in Lu Ping's body surged like a great river. He did not show any signs of temporary lack of true vitality after performing the supreme magic. Instead, he quickly formed a seal in front of his chest and pressed it down on the water Shura who could not dodge in time. Although Lu Ping and the Azura were separated by dozens of feet, the seal seemed to ignore the existence of space. The moment Lu Ping made the seal, it had already been applied to the Azura's body. The protective divine art around Azura instantly let out a cracking sound. Immediately after, Azura himself seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. His entire body was sent flying backward like a prawn. Lu Ping's consecutive attacks had always been like a raging river. Once he attacked, there was no reason for him to stop halfway. This kind of powerful divine art that was so closely linked gave people a feeling that it could penetrate through any hole and was impossible to resist. Just as the Azura was hit by Lu Ping's mysterious seal, the sword of true spirit was ready to attack again. A green dragon roared out of the sword light and crashed into the Azura who had yet to recover from Lu Ping's attack. The third attack, Green Dragon Sea Disturbance Technique. The Azura was already severely injured. At this time, the Azura finally panicked. Before it could completely control its body, it had already stumbled to escape into the distance. The other Azura also realized that the situation was not good and tried to come to help. How could Lu Ping let such a good opportunity slip away? He pressed his hands down slightly on the sea under his feet. The entire sea suddenly trembled, and a muffled rumble came from the depths of the sea. The 2 Azuras were about to converge. Once the 2 Azuras joined forces, it would be difficult for Lu Ping to kill them. However, at this moment, a series of 18 rotating water pillars suddenly hung upside down from the bottom of the sea. Like a row of bars in a prison, it completely separated the 2 Azuras. Although the 2 were close, they could no longer converge. The waterspout created by Lu Tianling was originally an evolution of the water control technique. Now, in the hands of Lu Ping, this inherited divine art of the Dao Zhonghua lineage was finally carried forward. It couldn't fight, couldn't escape, and its reinforcements were intercepted. The Azura, who had lost its backup, finally panicked. But Lu Ping's methods still did not stop. Just when the Azura was unable to break through the obstruction of Lu Ping's waterspout, and was about to escape in another direction, its body suddenly sank. The seawater under its feet had formed a whirlpool, and the tumbling seawater was thrown backward. It was unknown when Lu Ping had set up the Sea of All Rivers sword array with the Sword of True Spirit. As the Azura cried out in alarm, the powerful binding force of the All Rivers run into the sea sword formation made it impossible for him to break free. Then, the sword formation slowly rose into the air, and even the Azura's companion's spiritual treasure was completely engulfed by the sword formation, leaving behind only a miserable howl. There were a total of 5 attacks. Lu Ping calculated in his heart, what would happen if he used the Aqua Sword to cast the Invisible Sword technique? What would happen if he used the Avatar Body? What would happen if he attacked with the 9 Dragons Bell? What would happen if he used the Linglong Cauldron? What would happen if he used the Boundless Sea Mulberry Field technique? What would happen if he used the Natal Gentian Array? What would happen if he used the Having Spirit Treasure? And what would happen if he summoned the Dragon Aspect? In the end, Lu Ping came to a conclusion. It seemed that the Azura was no longer a threat to him. Just after Lu Ping killed an Azura in a head-on confrontation for 5 rounds, the Mara army that was besieging the treasured ship had actually collapsed. Only a few fearless Mara were still relentlessly attacking the treasured ship. Lu Ping's body shook, and an invisible aura immediately calmed the turbulent space around him. Then, he took a step forward and appeared above the treasured ship. A huge bell about 10 feet high floated in front of Lu Ping's head. The walls of the bell were engraved with 9 flood dragons baring their fangs and brandishing their claws in the clouds. As the huge bell flickered with a faint light above Lu Ping's head, the 9 flood dragons seemed to have come to life, swimming on the walls of the bell. Lu Ping took a deep breath, stretched out his finger, and flicked the huge bell. Bang! With the treasured ship below Lu Ping as the center, a ripple that could almost be seen with the naked eye formed a huge sound wave ring that spread in all directions. The hundreds of Mara that were still besieging the treasured ship bore the brunt of the sound wave. First, more than 100 small Mara immediately solved the problem in midair, followed by a group of big Mara that smashed into the sea like hailstones and never floated up again. Then, dozens of big Mara fell into the sea with their heads in their hands amid shrill roars, constantly struggling. Then, a few blood Mara steered their escape lights as if they were drunk, slowly fleeing into the distance while sticking close to the surface of the sea. Only a few jade Mara steered their escape lights with trembling bodies and fled away from the sea near the treasured ship in panic. As for the other Azura, after Lu Ping killed the previous Azura, it had already led most of the Mara army to retreat. The remaining Mara that were still besieging the treasured ship were mostly deployed by the previous Azura. Although the Mara retreated, it fled in all directions. Dozens of escape lights immediately rose from the treasured ship and chased after the Mara. Then, they formed a large net and chased the escaping Mara to the south in an orderly manner. Lu Ping fell into the treasured ship, and the Junling disciples on the treasured ship were still talking about Lu Ping's heroic act of killing the Azura. They looked at Lu Ping with awe and admiration. Seeing that Jiang Tianlin had already come out of the treasure cabin, Lu Ping asked with a smile, "Marshal Uncle, was the trip to the storm ocean smooth?" Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "Although the entire process was extremely dangerous, in the end, there was no danger." Before Lu Ping landed on the treasured ship, he saw that the body of the treasured ship was covered in all kinds of mottled marks. The treasured ship itself was protected by formations, and the body of the ship was connected with all kinds of seals and runes. Ordinary treasures could not damage the body of the treasured ship at all. Only the spatial storms in the storm ocean could ignore the protective formations and directly affect the body of the treasured ship. Jiang Tianlin asked about the current situation of the North Sea. Lu Ping roughly described the situation after the treasured ship entered the storm ocean. Hearing that the forces of Blue Sea Sect and Supreme Profound Sect invaded Frost Island, injured Tian Shui Laozu, and colluded with the demon race to ambush Huangli Island, even Jiang Tianlin's expression changed. He said fiercely, "One day, I will destroy the inheritance of Blue Sea sect. After hearing that Tianjiang Laozu had passed away, Jiang Tianlin and the many Jinling disciples on the treasured ship all showed sad expressions. This old man had spent all his efforts on the treasured ship in his last 100 years. Now that the treasured ship had successfully set sail for the Middle Earth, the old man did not live to see the treasured ship return smoothly. One could not be immersed in sadness for too long. After Jinling repelled the first counterattack of Mara's army, perhaps it was because of Lu Ping's tyrannical strength, or perhaps it was because of the deterrence of the Nine-Dragon Bell, Mara's army did not organize another counterattack. The Sky Profound sect was not slow. They quickly finished cleaning up the northern part of the sea and successfully pushed the front lines south. They also made contact with Jinling. The majority of Mara's army in the sea had been driven south, and there was no longer a need to guard the entrance of the storm ocean. The treasured ship immediately set sail again. With the treasured ship as the center, the cultivators of Jinling also drew a line on the surface of the sea that spanned several hundred kilometers and pressed south. This time, Lu Ping voiced his doubts. "To Azuras. This matter is indeed fishy. If Marshal Nephew hadn't arrived in time and used a tyrannical method to kill one of them, I'm afraid that even if our sect was able to defend the entrance to the Sea of Storms, we would have to pay a great price." Jiang Tianlin seemed to have expected Lu Ping's doubts. He smiled and explained. "Speaking of which, this is the trouble caused by your martial uncle Tianfeng. When the treasured ship left the entrance of the storm ocean, it dispersed a group of Mara's troops that were guarding the entrance. Your martial uncle Tianfeng volunteered to chase after this group of Mara to investigate. We had just entered the Sky Profound Sect Sea region and did not understand the situation. We needed someone to investigate the situation in the nearby sea region. Unexpectedly, when he chased after a small deserted island several hundred kilometers away, 2 Azuras and thousands of Mara's army suddenly gathered near the island. Then, this group of Mara's army chased after him and killed their way to the entrance of the storm ocean. Lu Ping said thoughtfully, "A deserted island? Martial uncle, why don't we go there and take a look?" Chapter 1420. The treasure ship broke through the surface of the sea, and under the guidance of Liang Tianfeng, it sailed quickly south on the sea. When planning with the Tianxian sect to drive away Mara's army, Jinling was responsible for cutting off the escape route of Mara's army at the entrance of the Ocean of Storms. After persisting until they met up with the Tianxian sect cultivators, the two sides would pull a giant net over the vast sea 3,000 miles outside the Tianxian sect and drive the fleeing Mara south from the north to the south. Jinling was responsible for the sea area 800 miles west of the Tianxian sect. In order to prevent Mara's army from jumping over this line of defense, Jinling's dozen or so Dharma adepts, other than Lu Ping, Jiang Tianlin, and Liang Tianfeng, who led the way, stayed on the treasure ship. The rest of the Dharma adepts of Jinling led the disciples of their sects to travel side by side with the treasure ship and the Tianxian sect cultivators, driving Mara south from the sea. In the treasure cabin, when there were no enemies, Jiang Tianlin would let the treasure ship's spirit, Ru Yu, control the ship, while the three of them sat casually in the treasure cabin. Jiang Tianlin activated the abundant void mirror, and the mirror immediately showed the situation of the sea in front of the treasure ship as it sailed. "It's in this direction. 300 miles south of this coral reef island is the location of the deserted island. That was where we encountered Mara's army that was gathering. There were 2 Azuras. If the old man had been one step slower, he would have lost his life." Liang Tianfeng obviously still had some lingering fears. Jiang Tianlin asked Lu Ping, "Nephew Lu, do you suspect that there's something strange about this island?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "I hope there's something strange about it. We all know that Mara never stays in one place for too long unless there's something in this place that attracts Mara. This has also become a very popular saying in the cultivation world: Mara never stays in a place without treasures. If this is really a place where Mara's army has gathered, then this island is very worth exploring." Jiang Tianlin pondered for a moment and said, "Just in case, Inform everyone to return to the treasure ship and focus on figuring out what's strange about this island. After saying that, Jiang Tianlin turned to the treasure cabin and said, See if Xianwei has followed us out to the sea. If not, call him here. As the only mindseeker in Jinling, wise Master Xuanwei's status had risen. Especially after the dispute with Tianshu Laozu, wise Master Xianwei had received a lot of support from the sect. However, this time, he was also sent to Midland for the treasure ship's westward journey. After the treasure ship docked, wise Master Xianwei would head to Yingshan Courtyard. What? Before the dragon-shaped statue could react, it saw that a drumstick had appeared in Lu Ping's hand. Impressively, it was also a transcendent artifact. The dragon-shaped statue was shocked and said, What are you doing? That's a drumstick, not a bell hammer. Hey, hey! Lu Ping used the drumstick in his hand to strike a 9-dragon bell. The other 8 bronze bells on the treasure ship responded one after another, as if they were telepathic. Thus, the treasure ship rang out 9 times in a row. Clang! 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 The 9 bell rings rang out one after another, and the originally calm sea in front of the treasure ship suddenly became turbulent. Then, blood-curdling screams came from the sea in the distance. Countless Mara broke out of the water, and went crazy under the ringing of the 9-dragon bell of the Great Tao. They scurried on the surface of the sea like headless flies, causing the entire sea to churn. Countless huge waves and undercurrents wreaked havoc in the 50 miles ahead of them. There were even many Mara that started killing each other in the chaos. Is Mara's army going to ambush us in this area of the sea? Liang Tianfeng had unknowingly appeared behind Lu Ping, and he was also shocked by the scene of demons dancing in front of him. If the treasured ship were to really sail into the ambush area of the Devil Luo army at this moment, under the sudden attack of the Devil Luo army, even if the people of Jinling sect could protect the treasured ship, they would still suffer a great loss. They're just some small fries. Mara's real trump card can't be affected too much by the 9-dragon bell. Those high-level Mara that haven't appeared yet are the ones that can really cause damage to the treasure ship. The 9-dragon bell can only make Mara's ambush fail. The remaining ones are the tough ones. Let's prepare for a tough battle. This deserted island is really strange. However, the 9-dragon bell's random hammering is probably enough to make this group of Mara suffer. It seems that the big Mara below the blood Mara have all fallen into chaos. The little Mara is nowhere to be seen. I'm afraid that they've already been killed under the sea. This is much more powerful than Senior Xiang Lu's sea bell. Lu Ping shook his head and said with a serious expression, The 9-dragon bell is a big formation formed by the 9 bronze bells. Its power is not much different from the sea bell. After all, the 9-dragon bell is not a real spirit treasure. However, when the 9 bells work together, the range of their remarkable power far exceeds that of the sea bell. That's why the scene before us is like this. If it was the sea bell in a specific area, I'm afraid that once the bell rings, even half of the big Mara will be killed. The 4 Dharma adepts who returned to the treasure ship were Tianfeng, Tiancheng, Tianshan, and Tianyuan, the 4 mid-Dharma adepts. Seeing the scene in front of them, they did not need Lu Ping to say anything more. They were already prepared for a big battle. Just as Lu Ping finished speaking, a loud roar suddenly came from the deserted island 50 miles away. The sound waves were so loud that even the clouds floating in the sky were affected and were instantly shattered. The chaotic scene on the sea suddenly stopped. The roar seemed to have a magical power that instantly soothed the pain caused by the damage done to the Mara army by the 9-dragon bell. A black cloud rose from the deserted island and rolled in the direction of the treasure ship. Lu Ping exclaimed, This is troublesome. There's actually a sky fiend on this deserted island. The appearance of the sky fiend not only surprised Lu Ping, but it also caused Jinling to fall into a panic. Although Jiang Tianlin was in the treasure cabin, the situation around the treasure ship was clearly shown on the Yingshu mirror. Should we retreat first? Jiang Tianlin was still calm. Even if the sky fiend appeared, the power of the treasure ship would be able to completely resist it. At the very least, they could retreat safely. At this time, Jinling would not have to fight to the death in order to block the entrance of the ocean of storms like before. Although once Jinling retreated, the plan of the four sects to chase Mara out on the sea would most likely fail. The appearance of the Sky Fiend was also clearly beyond everyone's expectations. No one would blame Jinling for this. Lu Ping's eyes flashed as he stared at the black fog of the Sky Fiend that was getting closer and closer. He gritted his teeth and said, "There's no hurry. If we fight like this without fighting, wouldn't it make the sects of the Central Plains look down on the sects of the North Sea? Uncle Masters, guard the treasure ship with your lives. I will go and meet this Sky Fiend first," Liang Tianfeng said. "Are you confident? Now is not the time to show off. Why don't we retreat first and inform the Heavenly Profound sect of the situation here? The pure Yang Laozu of the Heavenly Profound sect and the Heavenly Moon sect will come to deal with it. We can also temporarily stabilize the line of defense and stop Mara from escaping to the north." Lu Ping pointed to the deserted island in the distance and said, "Uncle Master, that deserted island is not only a gathering place for Mara, but also an existence like the Sky Fiend. What do you think is on that island? Mara will not land in a place without treasures, let alone a Sky Fiend. If we wait for Chi Fan and Full Moon to come, some of the treasures on the island may fall into our hands. Wealth comes from danger, so I must give it a try no matter what." Liang Tianfeng still wanted to persuade him, but Lu Ping smiled and said, "Rest assured, Uncle Master. Even if I am not a match for the Sky Fiend, I am confident that I can escape unscathed." However, there are still 2 Azuras around the Sky Fiend to protect it, so I will need Uncle Master and the others to restrain it. At this moment, Jiang Tianlin said, "That's good too. Once there is danger, retreat to the treasure ship as soon as possible. When the time comes, you and I will work together. With the treasure ship's sturdiness, even the Sky Fiend can't do anything to us." Chapter 1421. Lu Ping hung the 9-dragon bell above his head, while the other 8 bells remained on the ship, echoing with him from afar. The dragon-shaped carvings on the bell walls swam around, as if they were extremely excited about the upcoming battle, but Lu Ping knew that they were actually afraid that they would be smashed by the sky demons and sink to the bottom of the sea. The ship moved again, cutting through the wind and waves. Whenever Mara tried to attack, the 8 bronze bells hanging around the ship would be rung at the same time. At this time, even a blood Mara would inevitably be affected when it rushed to the front of the ship. Battles between masters were usually fought in an instant. Whether it was Liang Tianfeng, Gui Tianshan, Chu Tianqing, or Lu Tianyuan, the 4 mid-Dharma adepts all had rich experience in fighting on the edge of life and death, so they naturally would not let go of such a good opportunity. With Jiang Tianlin controlling the ship with all his strength and not participating in the attack, the 4 mid-Dharma adepts, with the help of the ship, had almost the power of a late Dharma adept. The 4 of them were responsible for the 4 corners of the ship, so they naturally would not hesitate when faced with such an opportunity. In just the first attack, 5 blood Mara were killed, and 2 jade Mara were injured and forced to retreat. Among them, Liang Tianfeng alone killed 2 blood Mara and injured 1 jade Shura. Because among the 4 of them, Liang Tianfeng was directly in front of the ship, so he suffered the greatest impact. Naturally, the results of the battle were also the greatest, but the pressure was also the heaviest. Chu Tianqing, who was on the port side of the ship, also killed 2 blood Shura. After Tianqing Laozu recovered from his original injury, his strength could be described as increasing by leaps and bounds. Coupled with the perfection of the Inferno sky-burning hellish formation, his strength was currently the strongest among the 4 mid-Dharma adepts on the ship. It was just that on the sea, Tianqing Laozu's strength was somewhat restrained. Otherwise, the task of guarding the bow of the ship would not have fallen to Liang Tianfeng. Gui Tianshan, who was guarding the stern of the ship, did not kill any high-level Devil Luo. However, a Jade Devil commanded a group of Devil Luo and attempted to launch a sneak attack from the back of the ship. However, it was only a face-to-face encounter before it was injured by Gua Tianshan using the power of the treasured ship's formation. The high-level Mara could not break through the blockade of the 4 mid-Dharma adepts, and the low-level Mara did not even have the chance to get close to the treasured ship under the continuous ringing of the 8 and 9 dragon bells. Even if he managed to get close, he would be easily killed by the Zhenling disciples around the treasured ship. The heavenly devil black fog covered half of the sky and spread toward the treasured ship. Meanwhile, the huge treasured ship also rushed toward the black fog. Seeing that the black fog was about to engulf the entire treasured ship, Lu Ping slowly rose from the treasured ship and flicked his fingers toward the 9 dragon bell in front of him. Bang! 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 Every time the enormous bell rang, it would cause the 8 bronze bells on the treasured ship to ring. Every time the bronze bells were struck, an invisible sound wave would spread out, and the black fog that covered the sky would shrink back as a result. Lu Ping struck 3 times in a row, and the bell rang 27 times on the surface of the sea. The black fog that covered the sky could not advance any further due to the ringing of the bell. 2 loud roars were heard, and the 2 Asuras around the heavenly devil were furious. They attacked the treasured ship from 2 different directions, and there were close to 10 Jade Mara following behind the 2 Asuras. However, at this time, Lu Ping suddenly broke away from the protection of the treasured ship and completely ignored the high-level Mara who attacked from both sides. Instead, he went straight for the heavenly devil that was covered by the black fog. At this time, Lu Ping's entire body was filled with tyrannical power, and the spiritual ether in his body was like a flood, setting off wave after wave of flood in his blood vessels. Although he had broken away from the protection of the treasured ship, Lu Ping's cultivation was still enhanced by the treasured ship. At this time, Lu Ping felt that he had never been so powerful before. In fact, for a moment, he seemed to have touched the barrier of advancing to the pure yang stage. He felt that there was a thunder trial in the sky that was resonating with the spiritual ether in his body. That was undoubtedly the 3rd thunder trial. This meant that at this time, with the enhancement of the treasured ship, Lu Ping's cultivation had actually reached the peak of the late Dharma stage in a short period of time, and he was only 1 step away from summoning the 3rd thunder trial. The sky was filled with strange laughter, as if it was mocking Lu Ping for overestimating himself and trying to hit a rock with an egg. And there was also a hint of mockery on Lu Ping's face. The heavenly devil thought that with the interference of its soul-devouring magic, Lu Ping would definitely not be able to detect its true body hidden in the black fog. Now that Lu Ping had rashly entered the fog, he would definitely be walking into a trap. However, this heavenly devil did not know that Lu Ping had a nature-defying divine will cultivation. After receiving the enhancement of the treasured ship, his divine will had a range of nearly 200 miles. Moreover, his divine will was protected by the jade phosphorus soul fire, so he was not afraid of the heavenly devil's soul-devouring magic at all. He had already determined the location of the heavenly devil's true body the moment he entered the black fog. But after all, the heavenly devil had the advantage of the heavenly devil. Just at the moment when Lu Ping entered, a few wisps of black fog immediately condensed and formed a few fog pythons that used the soul-devouring black fog as a cover and charged towards Lu Ping from all directions. However, Lu Ping was already prepared. Just as the fog pythons were about to quietly surround Lu Ping, the Sword of True Spirit released a sword chi halo around Lu Ping's body, protecting Lu Ping within it. Then 9 water dragons rushed out from the halo in succession in all directions. Each water dragon was prepared to find the location of the soul-devouring fog python hidden in the fog. Both sides immediately began to fight, stirring up the black fog that filled the sky. The heavenly devil clearly did not expect Lu Ping to break through its techniques so easily. It was slightly shocked and was about to attack again. However, when it came to attacking first, there were pitifully few people in the cultivation world who could match up to Lu Ping. The characteristics of his powerful and endless spiritual chi determined that Lu Ping could always be 1 step ahead and use more powerful techniques than ordinary people to gain the upper hand. Just at the moment when the sword-light dragon rushed into the soul-devouring black fog, a brilliant light had already risen from behind Lu Ping. The purple-gold light was accompanied by a strong pure yang qi, and it dispersed the surrounding soul-devouring black fog far away. It was as if a paradise filled with vitality had opened up in the deathly silent black fog, and the brilliant light was the savior of this paradise. At the moment when the purple-gold light burst out of the soul-devouring black fog, the heavenly devil hidden in the soul-devouring black fog was full of disgust for this kind of aura. It instinctively wanted to guide the soul-devouring black fog to try to extinguish this light aura. However, a sharp killing intent suddenly broke through the air from the place where the light burst out. The heavenly devil was shocked and instinctively felt that something was wrong. It seemed that the person who broke into the soul-devouring black fog had long been aware of its hiding place, and had already found its location. Just as the heavenly devil was about to change its location, it suddenly found that an aura had firmly locked onto it. Then two blade lights cut through the thick black fog, one from the left and one from the right, strangling it. The moment Lu Ping entered the soul-devouring black fog, he had already discovered the location of the heavenly devil, but he did not go forward to fight at the beginning. Instead, he pretended to be a headless fly and wandered around. Just when the heavenly devil thought that it could easily use the soul-devouring power to kill him without anyone knowing, Lu Ping suddenly cast the pure yang spiritual treasure and found the position of the heavenly devil and cut it. And at the moment when the spiritual treasure was cut in half, Lu Ping had already given up on the mantis around him, and with a flash of light under his feet, he had already rushed to the place where the heavenly devil was previously. Suddenly letting go of the spiritual treasure at the moment it was used, although this would weaken part of the power of the spiritual treasure, but Lu Ping believed that even if he used his full strength, the blow just now might not be able to really hurt the heavenly devil. On the contrary, after this blow, the heavenly devil, who was still a little careless, would inevitably adopt a more cautious way to deal with him. It would not be easy to find it again. At this time, the most important thing was to be able to tightly catch the trace of the heavenly devil. Because after leaving the treasure ship, the cultivation that was blessed on Lu Ping had slowly faded. Although even if Lu Ping restored his original cultivation, he was confident that he could not be defeated by the heavenly devil. It was bound to waste a lot of time and attract unnecessary variables. At this time, the one who wanted to end the battle as soon as possible was Lu Ping himself. Sure enough, although the blow of the pure yang spiritual treasure made the heavenly devil suffer a loss, in fact, it did not really hurt the heavenly devil. After blocking the strangulation of the scissors, the heavenly devil couldn't care less about the damage of the spiritual treasure itself. It was eager to use the soul-devouring black fog to hide again. It had already noticed that the opponent in front of it was difficult to deal with. However, at this moment, a tyrannical divine thought forcibly pushed away the invasion of the soul-devouring black fog on the divine thought. Under the protection of the green soul fire, it firmly locked the trace of the heavenly devil. This time, the heavenly devil was a little flustered. It did not expect that the person in front of it would be so difficult to deal with. The soul-devouring black fog shrank and condensed again. A fortress-like fog city instantly formed, firmly isolating Lu Ping outside the city. Even Lu Ping did not dare to attack with divine thought. The soul-devouring black fog was born to restrain divine thought. It was already very lucky that Lu Ping could use the green soul fire to protect his divine thought from being eroded in the fight against the heavenly devil. Occasionally, he could use his divine thought to attack the soul-devouring black fog from a distance. But when facing the fog wall condensed by the heavenly devil with most of the soul-devouring black fog, he would be courting death if he attacked blindly. But at this time, Lu Ping suddenly reached out to the top of his head. Unknowingly, a dark cloud also condensed above the soul-devouring black fog. Rumble! A huge gourd flashed in the thunder and lightning in the dark cloud. Then, a heavy downpour came from the sky, instantly washing away the fog wall in front of him. With the triple light's sacred water as the medium, and the 7 treasures thunder gourd to activate the art of clouds and rain, Lu Ping held the pure Yang spiritual treasure in his hand and blocked the heavenly devil who had lost the protection of the soul-devouring black fog wall. Chapter 1422. Lu Ping's storm-like attacks made the heavenly demon tremble in fear. However, the heavenly demon did not know that Lu Ping was making use of the time to strike fear into the heavenly demon before his cultivation level dropped. The heavenly demon was terrified of Lu Ping. Just as the triple light sacred water washed away the heavenly demon's fog wall, Lu Ping stood in front of the heavenly demon with the pure Yang spiritual treasure in his hand. The two ends of the praying mantis did not know what fear was. It only liked it when Lu Ping used its two big blades to cut everything in front of it in half. And Lu Ping did as it wished. The moment he stood in front of the heavenly demon, he had already taken out the pure Yang spiritual treasure. As he opened the scissors, two blade lights were already aimed at the heavenly demon. At such a close distance, under Lu Ping's divine telekinesis, the heavenly demon was almost in a situation where it could not dodge. However, the heavenly demon still chose to retreat. Although the accompanying spiritual treasure in his hand might have surpassed a second tribulation spiritual treasure in terms of power and quality, it was still a companion spiritual treasure. It could not be compared to a spiritual treasure of the same level that had been tempered by the thunder tribulation. Previously, in order to resist the pure Yang spiritual treasure's attack, the heavenly demon had to use the companion spiritual treasure to take the attack of the praying mantis. It even caused some damage to the companion spiritual treasure and suffered a great loss. This time, in such a close confrontation, the heavenly demon still could not avoid the pure Yang spiritual treasure's attack. The heavenly demon still had to take the attack head-on. However, the heavenly demon could take the opportunity to retreat. Although the pure Yang spiritual treasure's attack was powerful, it was not easy to injure the heavenly demon. The companion spiritual treasure in the heavenly demon's hand was a cloud of constantly changing fog. It looked weak, but in fact, it was extremely tough and changeable. Just as Lu Ping's scissors approached, the cloud of fog had already set up 9 fog shields in front of it. The blade light closed, and the 9 fog shields were broken one by one. But the sky demon behind the fog shields had already escaped silently. Lu Ping could only see its back from afar. However, even though Lu Ping was not in the mood to fight to the death with the sky demons, he wanted to seize the opportunity to chase after the sky demons and drive them into the southern sea region. After that, occupying the deserted island that could attract the sky demons was the most important thing for him to do. Lu Ping turned into a stream of light, making contact with the clouds in the sky as he flew forward. He followed closely behind the heavenly demon. Next, Lu Ping entered the void space before him. When he reappeared, he was already behind the heavenly demon. Although the heavenly demon was fleeing, it could clearly see what was happening behind it. Faced with Lu Ping's spatial divine ability, the heavenly demon released a faint mist. This mist also entered the void. When it appeared again, it had already wrapped around the sword of true spirit's hilt. Then, it firmly held Emoli in place. As expected, although the spiritual treasure had broken into 2 and cut through the 9 fog shields, the spiritual treasure in the heavenly demon's hands was not completely damaged even though it had been weakened. The sword of true spirit, which was bound, was helpless against the heavenly demon's escape. When Lu Ping arrived, the heavenly demon had already completely escaped from Lu Ping's control. Looking at Emoli, who was still struggling in front of him, Lu Ping casually suppressed the mist that was wrapped around the sword hilt. Then, he looked at the mist that was constantly struggling and changing in front of him. Lu Ping could not help but reveal a trace of surprise. Then, he stored the mist in the 7 Thunder Treasure's calabash. Previously, Lu Ping's pure Yang spiritual treasure had not been able to cause any damage to the heavenly demon's spiritual treasure. However, he did not expect that in order to escape, the heavenly demon would be willing to separate a part of its spiritual treasure's origin to hold Lu Ping back. After all, it was the origin essence of a spiritual treasure. Although it could not become a spiritual treasure on its own, It was an excellent item that could be used to improve the quality of other treasures. The 7 Thunder Treasures calabash had already reached a new bottleneck. This origin essence of a spiritual treasure would be of great help in improving the Thunder Calabash's quality. Although the heavenly demon had completely escaped from Lu Ping's control, Lu Ping still followed the heavenly demon's escape trail for thousands of miles. Only when he was sure that the heavenly demon was completely terrified and had fled to the southern sea did he turn around and return to the sea near the deserted island. The battle here had already subsided when Lu Ping defeated the heavenly demon. Although the attack of the 2 Azuras leading several Jade Mara had put a lot of pressure on the ship, with Jiang Tianlin's control and the support of the ship, the 4 mid-Dharma adepts on the ship were able to defend against the attack of the 2 Azuras. After that, Jiang Tianlin and Laozu suddenly attacked and killed 3 Jade Mara consecutively. Immediately after that, the black fog of the heavenly demon suddenly shrank and dissipated. Lu Ping had actually defeated the heavenly demon, causing the Mara in the sea to lose its will to fight. First, the Jade Mara, who had survived the 9 dragon bells, fled in the direction that the heavenly demon had retreated. Following that, the Jade Mara, who had surrounded the ship, was also frightened by Jiang Tianlin's attacks. In the end, it abandoned the 2 Azuras and retreated. At this time, the 2 Azuras also knew that they had lost the advantage. When Jiang Tianlin was about to attack one of the Azuras again, the 2 Azuras retreated at the same time, as if they had agreed on it. After Lu Ping returned, the ship was already cruising around the deserted island. At the same time, it began to eliminate the Mara who were still hiding in the surrounding sea. It was only after Lu Ping returned that Zhiling prepared to go to the island. However, they did not encounter too much danger on the island. Although there were still many Mara hiding, under the suppression of Lu Ping and the various Dharma adepts, Laozu, they quickly escaped or died. The entire island was quickly occupied by Zhiling after more than half a day of clearing. After that, perfected Xianwei began to lead the sex cultivators to begin a large-scale survey of the island. Meanwhile, Lu Ping returned to the ship. "We still have to inform the other sects about the heavenly demon," Jiang Tianlin agreed. "This is not a small matter, and we can't hide it. I've already sent out the news, and I believe that the Profound Sky sect and the Moon sect will soon have a response. I've already informed my own sect to postpone advancing. I believe that because of the Sky Demon, the other sects won't blame us. Next, we'll use all our strength to investigate this deserted island and see what's strange about it. There's only one Sky Demon here." Lu Ping hesitated for a moment and said, "I am afraid that we cannot hide the matter of the deserted island. After all, this is the Heavenly Profound Sect's territory. Although Mara was wreaking havoc on the sea, the Heavenly Profound Sect still has many hidden sentries in the sea region to monitor." Jiang Tianlin said, "Of course. We don't plan on hiding it from the other sections. We just want to be first. No matter what we discover on the island, our sect can't monopolize it. However, our sect can get a part of it first, and the other sects can't say anything. This is an unwritten rule in the cultivation world." At this moment, Lu Tianyuan walked into the ship. There was a sliver of excitement on his face. He said, "There is news from the deserted island. A spiritual stone mine has been discovered. Go and have a look." "A spiritual stone mine?" Jiang Tianlin was stunned. "It has only been half a day." "So fast?" Lu Ping was also stunned. However, the two of them were thinking very quickly. They were both thinking about how to hide this news for as long as possible so that Zhiling could obtain more benefits. The two of them looked at each other and understood each other's thoughts. However, at this time, they still had to go to the island to investigate. It would be best if they could confirm the grade of the spiritual stone mine. However, the grade of the spiritual stone mine should not be low since everyone on the island could not wait to send the news back. Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin quickly arrived at the deserted island. Spiritual Master Xianwei was already waiting there with a face full of excitement. When he saw Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin descending, He quickly went forward and tried to suppress the excitement on his face. He said, "A treasured island. This is a treasured island!" Lu Ping's face lit up. He said, "What grade is the spiritual stone mine?" Spiritual Master Xuanwei's suppressed voice was filled with joy. He said, "It is a large spiritual stone mine." "What?" Even though Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin were prepared, they could not help but exclaim when they confirmed the news. Spiritual Master Xuanwei seemed to have predicted their expressions. He immediately changed his expression and said, "Unfortunately." At this time, even Lu Ping could not stay calm. He hurriedly said, "Unfortunately what?" Spiritual Master Xuanwei was very satisfied that he could control the atmosphere of the scene and make the two great cultivators look nervous. However, he also knew that he should stop while he was ahead in front of the two. He immediately explained, "Unfortunately, this spiritual stone mine was severely damaged by Mara. It almost dropped a grade. Although we managed to chase away Mara and barely maintain the grade of a large spiritual stone mine, compared to the rich mines on Frost Island, this one can only be considered a poor mine." The so-called poor mine in a large spiritual stone mine meant that the ratio of top-grade spirit stones in this spiritual stone mine was extremely low. Frost Island's spiritual stone mine not only produced a high amount of spirit stones, the ratio of top-grade spirit stones it contained was also not low. It was truly a rich mine. However, the spiritual stone mine in front of them could only barely reach the standard of a large spiritual stone mine. Moreover, due to the destruction caused by Mara's army, the ratio of top-grade spirit stones produced was extremely low. Moreover, there's more than just a spiritual stone vein on this deserted island. The entire deserted island is a huge associated spiritual stone vein. Apart from this large spiritual stone vein, there was originally another large spiritual stone vein in the associated spiritual stone vein. However, it was also ruined by Mara. Now that the main spiritual stone vein has been destroyed, the spiritual stone vein has flowed into the other 7 branches. There are only 7 medium-sized spiritual stone veins left on the island that are distributed in different directions. Lu Ping glanced at Spiritual Master Xuanwei. Lu Ping, who had calmed down, immediately saw through this guy's thoughts. He glared at him and said, "What else is there? Say it all in one go!" Taoist Profound Wei chuckled and said, "Presently, we've discovered traces of a few other ore veins on the island, but we haven't had the time to specifically investigate them. What ore veins are they, their grade, and the size of the reserves haven't been determined yet. But what we can be sure of is that this small island is indeed a treasure island worthy of its name." At this time, Jiang Tianlin asked, "Why didn't the Sky Profound sect discover such a treasure island before?" Chapter 1423. At this time, Jiang Tianlin suddenly asked, "Such a treasure island is only about 2,000 miles away from the coast of Tianxian sect. With Tianxian sect's strength, why didn't they investigate their own island? Why didn't they discover it before?" Enlightened Master Xuanwei seemed to be prepared for this and said, "I wonder if Uncle Master noticed the vegetation on the island when you arrived on this deserted island?" Jiang Tianlin and Lu Ping were stunned. What did this have to do with the vegetation on the deserted island? Enlightened Master Xuanwei continued to explain. "Although the vegetation on this deserted island was destroyed by Mara, the age of its growth is extremely limited. At least a few years, at most a few decades. When I was investigating the land veins of this deserted island, I discovered that the land veins of this island had undergone a drastic change in the past few decades. I suspect that this deserted island rose from the bottom of the sea because of an earthquake or volcanic eruption in the past few decades. In addition, the past few decades have been the period when Mara was wreaking havoc on the sea. It is normal that Tianxian sect didn't discover the treasure on this deserted island." Enlightened Master Xuanwei's explanation cleared up everyone's doubts. The exploration on the deserted island continued, and good news was passed to Jiang Tianlin and Lu Ping from time to time on the treasure ship. So far, enlightened Master Xianwei had confirmed that there was a large spirit stone vein, 7 medium spirit veins, and 8 associated veins on the deserted island. Furthermore, the reserves of the veins were extremely rich. There were 17 types of spirit stones confirmed, and 10 of them were of extremely high quality. They were extremely rare and precious spiritual materials in the cultivation world. Enlightened Master Xianwei was right to say that this deserted island was a treasure island. 2/3 of the Zhenling disciples on the treasure ship had rushed to the deserted island to prepare for the mining of the various veins. At the same time, they occupied 2 medium spirit veins in the northeast of the deserted island and started to build garrisons. The spirit stone vein that had long been excavated by Mara's army had also started to be restored and mined. At this time, enlightened Master Xianwei had become the busiest person in Zhenling. In the entire Zhenling, other than Jiang Tianlin and Lu Ping, everyone, including the Dharma adepts, listened to his orders. The development of the entire treasure island was planned and handled by him alone. Inside the treasure cabin, Jiang Tianlin said, "We can't hide this matter any longer. This treasure island isn't something our sect can swallow alone." Lu Ping nodded and said, "The treasure ship has been docked for another 2 days. The top priority is to do what we have planned before." This time, all the sects have joined hands to face the Crystal Palace. "We can't wait any longer," Jiang Tianlin said. "If that's the case, let's inform the Profound Sky sect about the discovery of the island. Sooner or later, the other sects will find out about it. Since that's the case, why don't we be a bit more generous and take the initiative to inform the Profound Sky sect, Heavenly Moon sect, Sky Splitting sect, and Carefree sect to jointly control the island with our sect? I believe that the alliance of the 5 great sects will be enough to resist the cultivation world's greed for this island." Lu Ping agreed and said, "Indeed, in terms of spirit stone mines, the treasure island isn't as good as the Frost Island. However, if we include the other spirit stone mines, the variety, quality, and reserves far surpass the Frost Island. To be honest, this treasure island was first discovered by our sect. Now that we have to take the initiative to invite all the sects to share the benefits, I am more or less unwilling." Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "Sharing the benefits also means sharing the risks. This treasure island isn't something our sect can swallow alone. However, our sect has already gained the upper hand. According to the rules of the cultivation world, before the matter of the Crystal Palace is completed, this treasure island should be under our sect's custody. With this buffer period, I believe that Master Xianwei will be able to achieve some results. Furthermore, our sect will also be able to get a bit more when we divide the profits in the future. This is already not bad. Then leave Master Uncle Gua, Master Uncle Tian Shu, and a group of our disciples to stay on the island to assist Master Xianwei. The others will continue to stay on the treasure ship and chase away Mara, who is on the sea according to the plan." "All right." Sure enough, when Zhenling sect discovered the treasure island, it quickly caused a commotion in the Tianxian sect. A large spirit stone mine and several high-grade spirit material mine were enough to attract the covetous eyes of the entire cultivation world. The Profound Sky sect also knew that this matter was of great importance, and immediately notified the Heavenly Moon sect, Skyrend, and Carefree Pavilion. However, because of the unexpected incident of the Sky Demon appearing at the same time and the large-scale mobilization of the 5 sects, it had already attracted the attention of the cultivation world. The Crystal Palace was also on guard. Currently, the various sects couldn't find the time to discuss the matter of the treasure island. They wanted to complete all the arrangements before the Crystal Palace could react. Thus, the matters of the treasure island could only be temporarily entrusted to Zhenling. Just when Zhenling and the Profound Sky sect were working together to chase Mara south in the sea, the Heavenly Moon sect simultaneously changed their previous action of defending the coast. From the coastline, they began to advance in a large scale into the sea, all the way until they were 1,000 miles deep into the sea. This was also the distance that the Heavenly Moon sect had shrunk to when they were being suppressed by the Crystal Palace. Until the disaster of Mara broke out on the sea, the Heavenly Moon sect, in order to turn the disaster of Mara into a barrier that blocked the Crystal Palace, simply withdrew all of their strength from the sea to the shore. This time, the Heavenly Moon sect attacked again. The Pure Yang cultivator, Full Moon Laozu, personally took command and once again pushed the battle line to 1,000 miles deep into the sea. At the same time, Mara's army that had been driven south from the northern sea poured in. The Heavenly Moon sect, who had long been prepared, firmly guarded their own sea defense line. Further south of the Heavenly Moon sect's sea was the ocean of storms that led to the South Sea. There was no entrance to the South Sea, so Mara's army was completely squeezed in the narrow and long sea between the Heavenly Moon sect and the ocean of storms. In this sea, because the Crystal Palace was unwilling to give up their goal of penetrating deep into the Middle Land, they had never withdrawn the cultivators stationed in the East Sea. Instead, they built garrisons on islands of all sizes in this sea, tenaciously resisting the Mara's rampage on the sea. In the process of fighting with Mara, the main force of the Crystal Palace cultivators, led by the Pure Yang cultivator, Yuan Deng Laozu, to invade the Middle Land, although they had paid a great price in the process of fighting with Mara, they still left many garrisons of the Crystal Palace above the sea of the Heavenly Moon sect. Once the disaster of Mara was eliminated, the Crystal Palace could use these garrisons to launch a fierce counterattack against the Heavenly Moon sect. Taking advantage of the fact that the Holy Lands of the Middle Land were busy with their own affairs, the Crystal Palace's power could penetrate deep into the Middle Land and lay down a foundation. However, after the Heavenly Moon sect re-advanced on the sea, the Mara in the sea suddenly became denser because of the Heavenly Moon sect's driving, and the attacks on the garrisons of the Crystal Palace became more and more frequent. However, after a long time of fighting with the Mara, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace easily repelled the Mara's attacks on the garrisons, and did not take it seriously. However, because they were trapped in the sea of the Heavenly Moon sect for a long time, they could not detect the schemes of the Heavenly Moon sect and other sects in time. When the Mara in the Northern Sea went south, the number of Mara in the whole sea increased by several times, and Yuan Deng Laozu and the others finally realized that something was wrong. The garrisons of the Crystal Palace on several islands had already fallen under the fierce attacks of Mara. Yuan Deng Laozu was sent by the Crystal Palace to preside over the plan of expanding the territory of the Middle Earth, naturally because he was outstanding. At this time, he had already instinctively discovered the existence of danger, and immediately decided to lead the remaining cultivators of the Crystal Palace back to the East Sea. However, as early as a few days ago, the two treasured ships of the Carefree Pavilion and Skyren had been cruising in the East Sea under various pretexts. When they passed by the entrance of the storm ocean between the East Sea and the Middle Earth, they changed their course at the same time and plunged into the storm ocean. When the Crystal Palace realized that something was wrong, it was also when Yuan Deng Laozu was preparing to retreat to the East Sea. At this time, at the entrance of the storm ocean between the sea of the Heavenly Moon sect and the East Sea, two treasured ships appeared at the same time. On the treasured ships, there was Xiao Baiyu, the sword sage of the sky splitting, and they blocked the return route of the Crystal Palace. At this time, it also marked that Skyrend and the Carefree Pavilion had completely fallen out with the Crystal Palace. Yuan Deng Laozu, who got the news, was so angry that he cursed loudly. However, he still did not dare to lead the remaining cultivators of the Crystal Palace to fight against the two treasured ships, not to mention that Xiao Baiyu was there. In desperation, Yuan Deng Laozu had to take the risk to break through the north. However, unexpectedly, at the same time, the extraterrestrial demons, which had been driven south by Lu Ping, the treasured ships, and Qi Fan Laozu, finally met the army of Mara in the sea of the Heavenly Moon sect at an appropriate time. They encountered the cultivators of the Crystal Palace who were as panic-stricken as stray dogs. A great battle unfolded when both sides were extremely unwilling but unable to break free. 5 days later, when the two treasured ships of the Crystal Palace, which were led by two pure Yang cultivators, passed through the storm ocean and arrived at the sea of the Heavenly Moon sect, they faced the three treasured ships of the True Spirit sect, the Carefree Pavilion, and the Sky-Splitting sect, the three pure Yang cultivators, Qi Fan, Full Moon, and Xiao Baiyu, as well as Lu Tianping. who had become even more famous after defeating the extraterrestrial demons. Behind them was the boundless sea of the heavenly mystery sect, which was as calm as a mirror. Above this sea, the rampaging Mara, the ambitious Yuan Deng Laozu, and the other cultivators of the Crystal Palace had all sunk to the bottom of the sea and become food for the fish and shrimps. The two treasured ships of the Crystal Palace finally retreated with hatred. This also meant that the plan of the Crystal Palace to enter the Central Plains had suffered a major blow, and all their previous efforts had gone down the drain. The Crystal Palace then set off a storm of blood in the East Sea. The carefree pavilions suffered one setback after another under the suppression of the Crystal Palace, and their sphere of influence continued to shrink. Skyrend, on the other hand, was only at a slight disadvantage in the struggle against the Crystal Palace. But soon, the Dharma adepts of the Heavenly Moon sect appeared on the Carefree Island and helped in the struggle against the Crystal Palace. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mystery sect also frequently appeared in the sphere of influence of Skyrend. Soon after, the new large sect of the North Sea, Jinling, suddenly made a series of moves in the Parish Mystic realm. After connecting the Sea of the Waking Island and the Sea of the Listening Wave Island, and having a stable foundation, the 9 Dharma adepts of the Jinling, led by Jiang Tianlin, Mei Tianqin, and Gui Tianshan, went south to the East Sea and took control of the Three Families Island. They deterred the various forces in the sphere of influence of the former Northern Alliance, and supported the Carefree Pavilion. Chapter 1424. At the entrance of the stormy ocean of the Heavenly Moon Sect's sea region, the confrontation with the Crystal Palace's treasured ship caused the alliance of the 5 sects to become closer. When Xiao Baiyu proposed the plan to wipe out the Crystal Palace's forces in the Central Sea region, Lu Ping also asked for Jiang Tianlin's opinion. However, Jiang Tianlin did not hesitate like Lu Ping and readily agreed to this request. Lu Ping also asked for the reason, and Jiang Tianlin's explanation was very simple. Jinling could not be trapped in the North Sea and not make any progress. However, if it really wanted to leave the North Sea, it would inevitably disrupt the original power structure, and it was only a matter of time before it made enemies with others. Since it was inevitable to offend people, why would they go and provoke others? They might as well offend the people they already had enmity with even more. In the process of Jinling's rise, it had encountered the Crystal Palace's obstruction, whether overt or covert. The two sides had already formed enmity. Even if Jinling did not provoke the Crystal Palace would not allow Jinling to dominate the North Sea. The Fei Ling sect 4,000 years ago was a good example. Now, it was just making this enmity deeper. Moreover, Jinling was not fighting alone. This choice allowed Jinling to gain 4 powerful allies outside of the North Sea, so why not? Back then, Lu Ping could also hear Jinling's ambition from Jiang Tianlin's words. However, this ambition was exactly what Lu Ping was happy to see. On the central square of Tianxian City, the huge teleportation array had already reached the final stage. After Jinling's array master and Tianxian sect's array master worked together to incorporate the teleportation array into Tianxian City's defense system, Jinling's ultra-long-distance large-scale teleportation array was finally successfully set up. This also meant that the last link on the surface for Jinling to become a large sect had been completed. This large-scale teleportation array was connected to the North Sea's Tianling Mountain and could teleport 20 people at once. On the teleportation array, there were 404 indentations for spirit stones. The 4 indentations on the 4 sides were separated from the 4 indentations in the center. In other words, each activation of the teleportation array required 400 high-grade spirit stones or 4 top-grade spirit stones. The cost wasn't low, but Lu Ping recalled the small teleportation array that led directly to Yingshan's side courtyard. Not only could it only teleport 1 person at a time, but it also required a top-grade spirit stone to activate. Even after spiritual master Xianqin modified the teleportation array, it could only teleport 2 or 3 people at a time. Compared to that, the The teleportation array could only teleport one person at a time, and each activation required one high-quality spirit stone. Not long after the ultra-long-distance teleportation array was successfully set up, the entire teleportation array suddenly flashed with a dazzling white light. This was a sign that the teleportation array had been activated. At this time, the cultivators from Tianxian sect who came to watch the show realized that there were many high-level cultivators from Tianxian sect. Qingli Laozu, Liannan Laozu, Wulu Laozu, and others who were rarely seen gathered in front of the teleportation array. It seemed like they were waiting for someone. Finally, after the light flashed, Zhenling's group of 20 people appeared on the teleportation array in Tianxian City under the lead of Sect Master Lu Tianling. Qingli Laozu suddenly laughed and said, "Welcome, Sect Master Zhenling. Tianxian sect has failed to welcome you." It was only then that the cultivators of Tianxian City who came to watch the show realized that this graceful middle-aged woman was actually the sect leader of Zhenling's sect, the famous North Sea Water Sword Immortal, Lu Tianping's master. Lu Ping hurriedly introduced everyone from Tianxian sect to his master. Lu Tianling smiled and said, "Thank you seniors for waiting. Junior Lu Tianling has been impolite." Qingli Laozi said, "Sect Master Lu is too polite. Now that our two sects have formed an alliance, we should be close to each other." "Sect Master is too polite." Lu Tianling also smiled and said, "Then I am too polite." Qingli Laozi laughed and said, "Sect Master Lu, please. Senior, please." The Profound Sky sect clearly attached great importance to the visit of Zhenling sect's sect master. Aside from a few great cultivators who personally went to the teleportation array to welcome him, when Lu Tianling arrived at the dojo of the Profound Sky sect, Old Ancestor 7 fans was already waiting outside the dojo. No matter how magnanimous Lu Tianling was, he still felt somewhat flattered. After the leaders of the two sects had a secret discussion, Zhenling officially announced to the cultivation world that he had become a large sect. Lu Ping originally thought that this was the end of the sect's business. The remaining matters might be complicated, but he didn't need to worry about them. Just as he was thinking about where to bring Qi Lianying to have fun, Lu Tianling unexpectedly told him to accompany her to visit Tianxian sect. Only then did Lu Ping know that Zhenling was going to set up 2 super long-distance teleportation arrays in the Middle Earth, and the other one was in Chanwan City of Tianxian sect. There were 1 small matter and 2 big matters to attend to in this trip to the Heavenly Moon sect. The small matter concerned the marriage between Lu Tianyuan and the 3rd-generation direct disciple of the Heavenly Moon sect, Chan Xiang. Behind this matter was naturally the maintenance of the alliance between the 2 sections. Lu Tianling personally went to propose, which also showed the respect and importance that the Zhenling sect placed on the Heavenly Moon sect. However, Lu Ping was secretly ridiculing him. He knew that although this senior Lu seemed to be an honest person, in reality, not only was he in love with senior Chan Xiang from the Heavenly Moon sect, he also seemed to be exchanging flirtatious glances with senior Chan Yu. Moreover, what made Lu Ping even more amazed was that these 2 senior sisters seemed to have taken a liking to his senior Lu at the same time. Moreover, from the beginning to the end, these 2 sisters had never gotten into any romantic disputes because they liked the same person. Lu Ping couldn't help but fiercely ridicule behind his back. Could it be that they wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Unfortunately, only one of the 2 could become Lu Tianyuan's Dao companion. Tianxian sect definitely wouldn't give their 2 direct disciples to 1 person as Dao companions, and Zhenling also couldn't disregard the dignity of Tianxian sect. However, he didn't know how his senior Lu would choose. Could it be that he was really going to take one away and leave the other heartbroken? Secretly, Lu Ping was already extremely jealous. Now that he saw senior Lu frowning all day long, he couldn't help but feel happy in his heart. "Who asked you to be fickle? This time, you've gone too far." However, he didn't realize that he also had a black fox at home, yet he brought Qi Lianying everywhere to play outside. Compared to his senior Lu, he was probably even worse. The second important matter was that the leaders of the 5 sects would take this opportunity to hold an alliance meeting in Tianxian sect. They would announce to the cultivation world that the five sects had successfully formed an alliance. They would rise or fall together. In reality, it was an alliance to attack and defend against the Crystal Palace. The third matter was to discuss the distribution of the various cultivation resources on the treasured island discovered in Tianxian Sect's sea region. After knowing the third matter, Lu Ping already knew why his teacher had asked him to accompany him to Tianxian Sect. He wanted to bring him there to demonstrate. Although the five sects were equal, in reality, they still had to be ranked. In terms of time, Junling was the last to be established, and had the weakest foundation. Naturally, it should be ranked last among the sects without a sect. However, in terms of the number of Dharma adepts and high-level battle power, Junling was completely above Xiaoyao Pavilion. Even when compared to Tianxian Sect, they were almost on par. As for Skyrend, if it wasn't for Xiao Baiyu, with Junling's current strength, even Skyrend would be inferior to it. However, Junling looked at the other four sects in this way. In reality, when the other four sects looked at Junling, they were also at a loss. If it was only based on the cultivation of the various sects' high-level cultivators, Junling's current strength was above Xiaoyao Pavilion, and it was ranked fourth among the five sections. However, Junling had produced Lu Tianping, a freak who was even more monstrous than Xiao Baiyu. Before the conclusion of Yan Jiuxiao's death had yet to be determined, this guy had already crossed the ocean of storms with his physical body. Just when the cultivation world was exclaiming in shock that the Northern Sea Water Sword Immortal was about to become a pure Yang cultivator, this guy had actually single-handedly defeated a heavenly devil in the sea region of the Heavenly Profound Sect, and he himself was completely unharmed. This was not something that a quasi-pure Yang cultivator could do. This was simply a genuine pure Yang cultivator. Thinking back to the time when 8th Sister Zhu of the Nine Profound Tower had narrowly escaped death to assassinate a heavenly demon, even though 8th Sister Zhu had not only faced a heavenly demon, she had used assassination, and not a face-to-face battle like Lu Ping. Moreover, after successfully assassinating the heavenly demon, 8th Sister Zhu had also been heavily injured, and even when the Nine Profound Tower announced that they were sealing off the mountain, her condition did not improve. With Lu Ping around, how would the status of the five sects be determined? The astute Lu Tianling was naturally aware of this, so she had strictly ordered Lu Ping to follow her to the Heavenly Moon Sect this time, in order to clear Junling's name. This kind of matter was related to the status of the sects, and it might even affect the distribution of resources on the island. Naturally, Lu Ping would not refuse, and could only helplessly let Qi Lianing wait in Tianxian City for a period of time. In reality, after the Heavenly Moon Sects Alliance meeting, the people in charge of the five sects did not give in to each other regarding the allocation of cultivation resources on the island. Although they had formed an alliance, this did not mean that they would easily give up on their own benefits. Lu Ping had participated in the entire negotiation process from beginning to end. Even though he was dizzy from all the arguments, and was confused by all kinds of sharp words, he had no choice but to force himself to be entangled with the crafty old foxes of the various sections. In the end, the various sects finally reached an agreement. The Heavenly Profound Sect was the sect with the most profound strength and resources among the five sects, and the island was within the sea region under their jurisdiction. They could roughly get about a quarter of the entire island's cultivation resources, but the Heavenly Profound Sect also had to fulfill the responsibility of providing the main protection for the entire island. As the discoverer of the island, Junling drove away the heavenly demon entrenched on the island, preventing the loss of the large spirit stone vein on the island. However, he also paid the price of not a small number of cultivators from the sect. Furthermore, he generously reported the situation of the island to the other sects, so each sect more or less owed him. In addition, Junling had displayed a strength that made people wholeheartedly submit to him, and in the end, he was able to get a quarter of the island's cultivation resources. Originally, Lu Tianling even took the initiative to propose to share the defense of the island with the Heavenly Profound Sect, but it was rejected by Qingli Laozu without even thinking. What a joke, the Crystal Palace had tried every possible way to send their strength deep into the Middle Earth, but to no avail. Jinling was able to so easily send his strength deep into the heavenly profound Sex Sea region, and he still had to carry the good reputation of risking his life for his allies? The good things in the world could not be completely monopolized by the Jinling family. Chapter 1425. The Tianxian sect and the Jinling clan took up half of the resources on the island. Of the remaining half, the Tianhua sect took 20%. However, the Tianhua sect and the Tianxian sect had to bear the main responsibility of guarding the island. These two sects belonged to the training world of the Central Plains, so they did not have any scruples against the overseas sections. Thus, the Tianhua sect was naturally willing to have someone to assist them in guarding the island. The remaining 30% was divided equally between the Carefree Pavilion and the Skyren clan. These two sects did not contribute much to the discovery, mining, and protection of the island. However, as the nominal owners of the island, only these 5 sects working together could resist the covetous eyes of the various forces in the training world. From this point of view, the two sects had a clear conscience in taking 15% of the resources. Although the protection of the island was mainly handed over to the Tianxian sect and the Tianhua sect, the 3 overseas sects still had to send Dharma adepts to guard the island. Firstly, it was to assist the 2 sects in guarding the island. Secondly, it was to declare their ownership of the island. At the same time, they had to supervise the mining process of all the mineral veins on the island. After the 5 sects met at the Tianhua sect, the leaders of the various sects returned to their own sects and began to deploy troops according to the wishes of the sections. The Jinling clan stopped at the island before returning to the North Sea to complete the handover with the practitioners from the Tianxian sect and the Tianhua sect. At the same time, they sent the various training resources that had been mined from the island under the overall planning of spiritual master Xianwei onto the ship. They also left behind Tian Shu Laozu and 10 core forging practitioners as the representatives of the Jinling clan to the island. Then, they returned with a full load. At the same time, they returned to the North Sea with a bride from the Tianhua sect. After that, the 5 sects took action one after another. They adopted an obviously unified pace and began to work together to resist the counterattack of the Crystal Palace. Several large-scale conflicts occurred in the East Sea, causing the situation in the training world of the entire East Sea to become tense. In the conflicts, both sides suffered losses, but overall, they maintained a stalemate. However, in the eyes of the various forces in the training world, the holy lands of the East Sea, which had always been arrogant in expanding everywhere in the training world, had suffered a loss this time. It was only then that people realized that ever since the calamity of Mara began to gradually disappear, the situation in the entire world of cultivation had undergone a huge change. First, the demon clan of the Endless Mountain seized the opportunity when Mara's army attacked and occupied the Magic Cloud City in one fell swoop, breaking the blockade of the Lingyun Valley on the Endless Mountain range, and forming a suppression on the Lingyun Valley. Soon after, the Wishing School was discovered stealing the Qingming River's water vein. They suffered heavy losses at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain and even lost the weapon spirit of the heaven-opening artifact that they used to protect their luck. After that, the 9 Profound Tower encountered an unprecedented calamity from Mara. After 10 years of encirclement, the 9 Profound Tower's vitality was greatly damaged. They had no choice but to ally with the other sects to break through Mara's encirclement, and after that, they announced that they would seal off their sect. Immediately after that, the Purple Sun Palace encountered a situation similar to that of the Lingyun Valley. The entire demon clan of the Northwest joined forces to suppress the West Wilderness. The large sect supported by the Purple Sun Palace, the West Wilderness Palace, was destroyed, and the entire West Wilderness became a paradise for the demon clan. However, before the training world could take a breather, the sects of the South Sea suddenly fell out with the Skyward Pavilion. Then, the Ba Gui clan suddenly intervened in the battle between the two sides, causing the Skyward Pavilion to be unable to take care of itself in the south. Now, the 5 major sects, Tianxian, Tianhua, Jinling, sky-splitting, and Xiaoyao, suddenly plotted against the Crystal Palace, causing the Crystal Palace's forces in the central region to be wiped out, which shocked the world. Following that, the 5 major sects announced that they would form an alliance to fight against the Crystal Palace. Conflicts broke out in the East Sea's training world one after another. The Crystal Palace, which had always been the strongest in the training world, was helpless against the alliance of the 5 major sects, which shocked the entire training world. It was only then that the situation in the training world gradually became clear. People suddenly realized that the 6 sacred lands, which had led the training world for tens of thousands of years since the beginning of the world, had encountered unprecedented challenges after the calamity of Mara gradually subsided. Moreover, it seemed that the situation was not too good for them. When the 6 sacred lands encountered difficulties, the various forces in the training world, especially the sects, forces, and families that were previously under the control of the 5 sacred lands, began to stir. They tried to take advantage of the fact that the influence of the sacred lands had declined to the extreme to get rid of their control. For a time, the entire training world of the central region was in turmoil. The era when the 6 sacred lands controlled the training world seemed to be a thing of the past. "I didn't expect the central region to become like this," Lu Ping said to Qi Lianying, who was beside him, with a wry smile. Lu Ping had originally wanted to take Qi Lianying out to relax and travel around the central region. Unexpectedly, the central region was now in a state of chaos. In comparison, the overseas training world, especially the North Sea, had become a paradise after the Zhenling sect became a major sect and formed an alliance with the 5 major sections. Watching Qi Lianying knock down the dozen or so cultivators in front of him, one after another, Lu Ping was speechless. Was this the 4th or 5th wave of bandits they had encountered along the way? In Lu Ping's opinion, these so-called bandits were just some small sects or families with legacies in disguise. However, the entire training world of the central region seemed to be out of control. Everyone hoped to strengthen themselves in a short period of time through robbery. Otherwise, they could only be robbed by others. All the sects, big or small, seemed to have fallen into such a vicious cycle. Along the way, out of consideration for their respective identities, the 2 of them concealed their cultivation bases and traveled the cultivation world as low-level cultivators. Unexpectedly, someone quickly treated the 2 of them as fat sheep and pretended to be robbers in an attempt to rob them. It was even to the extent that even though Qi Lianying's face was covered with a red veil, her graceful figure and bewitching temperament gave off a powerful charm. Coupled with the low cultivation that she revealed, it gave those robbers an additional option to rob her. After casually sending these cultivators away, Qi Lianying had a sudden impulse and looted all of the storage artifacts on the bandits. She seemed to have fallen in love with the feeling of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Under her strong request, Lu Ping had no choice but to suppress his cultivation even more. There were 5 or 6 storage pouches hanging from his waist, and each of them was bulging. It was as if there was a label on his body that said, "I'm a fat sheep, come and rob me." Thankfully, Qi Lianying seemed to be treating this as a game. After teaching the bandits a lesson, he didn't kill them. Instead, he took all of their storage treasures. Qi Lianying. Although there was a lot of things, Lu Ping was naturally not interested in them. However, Qi Lianying was never tired of it, so Lu Ping could only let her do as she pleased. As time passed, the bandit title of red-clothed Rakshasa slowly began to spread in the areas they traveled. As for Lu Ping, he was gloriously ignored. When Qi Lianying heard about the title of red-clothed Rakshasa, she became even more proud and kept showing off to Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping secretly grumbled to himself. How did he become a Rakshasa without even killing a single person? Destruction of the Holy Land. Chapter 1426. Qi Lianying's talent was definitely very high. At least from Lu Ping's point of view, Qi Lianying's talent was no less than Lu Tianyuan's, and even comparable to Yin Tianchu's. The reason why Qi Lianying's level of practice was lower than that of the other two was because Qi Lianying had been seriously injured and her soul had been searched, causing her to lose all of her original memories. After being rescued by Mei Tianqin, Qi Lianying's level of practice was still there, but she was muddle-headed and could only restart her practice from scratch, which naturally delayed her progress. The other reason was that Qi Lianying had always been stuck in her heart, or rather, it was a knot in her heart. Perhaps she did not even realize this, but Lu Ping knew that it was because of this knot that she was unable to break through to the peak of the Dharma stage, even though she was only one step away from the peak of the Dharma stage. If she could not take this step, she would not be able to complete her practice in the early Dharma stage, and it would be even more difficult for her to advance to the mid-Dharma stage. If she were to forcefully summon the Thunder Trial, it might even cause her to fall short of success. Although Lu Ping couldn't fully understand Qi Lianying's thoughts, he could roughly guess what she was thinking. This was a knot in her heart that Lu Ping couldn't help her with. But he could find a way to help her temporarily forget about the things that were bothering her. This was the real reason why Lu Ping wanted to take her on a trip to the central mainland this time. He hoped that what they encountered on the trip would be able to alleviate the conflict in Qi Lianying's heart, or perhaps divert her attention to other things. Lu Ping had succeeded, but he did not expect the situation to be like this. Qi Lianying was very happy playing the pig to eat the tiger. With Lu Ping around, she was not afraid of the other party coming to find her. No matter what, it was much better to be lucky than to be helpless. In a tree-lined valley, a huge bronze wine cauldron floated above Qi Lianying's head. Clouds of blue mist seeped out of the cauldron and surrounded Qi Lianying, who was in the middle of cultivating. As Qi Lianying circulated her Jing-yuan, the mist slowly but continuously seeped into her body. Lu Ping, who was guarding her from afar, could feel the rising aura around Qi Lianying and finally relaxed. Qi Lianying had accumulated enough strength to completely touch the peak of the early Dharma stage, and she was only one step away from triggering the Thunder Trial. Now, although Qi Lianying had not resolved the knot in her heart was no longer as heavy as before. In addition, Lu Ping of the past 6 months had accompanied her on her travels to the central mainland, and his knowledge and of mind were much broader than before. It was only natural for her to improve her training. It was only when the air above Qi Lianying's head began to tremble that Lu Ping suddenly stood up and walked into the valley. At the same time, his aura enveloped the entire valley like a slowly rising water level, ready to drown Qi Lianying in her training at any time and interrupt her training. At this time, Qi Lianying suddenly opened her eyes and smiled at Lu Ping. "Don't worry, I remember what you said. The Thunder Trial won't come so soon." After a pause, Qi Lianying said softly, "Thank you." With Qi Lianying's intelligence, she had actually understood why Lu Ping had accompanied her on her travels when she had broken through to the peak of the Dharma stage. Lu Ping breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I just wanted you to see the scene of the Thunder Trial in advance, so you can be mentally prepared. But don't let the power of the Thunder Trial make you feel even more pressured." Lu Ping stretched out his hand, and the Linglong wine tripod that had been floating above Qi Lianying's head slowly fell into his hand. As for Linglong, when Qi Lianying had finished her training, she had already leaned on the side of the wine tripod and listened to their conversation. However, after hearing Lu Ping's words, she was immediately displeased and said, "That Linglong's Thunder Trial is for your partner to enjoy, but Linglong is about to face the second Thunder Trial. Don't scare this sister." Lu Ping laughed and smacked Linglong's head into the wine cauldron. He scolded, "You little brat, you're so smart. You've been accumulating for so many years. You've already gained so much from the Qingming River's water vein, and you've even devoured a lot of the pure Yan weapon spirit's origin essence. If you still can't overcome the second lightning tribulation, I'll just smash you into a pile of scrap metal." Linglong carefully stood on the side of the wine tripod, revealing only her eyes, and said in a low voice, "If I can't get through the Thunder Trial, I will naturally become scrap metal. There is no need for you to smash me." Lu Ping pretended to be angry and said, "What did you say?" Linglong said in a tender voice, "I want the 8 sceneries building. I want to become a pure yang spirit treasure like the Qianquan wine tripod." Lu Ping sighed and said, "The Qianquan wine tripod regulates the world's spirit veins. If you take this path, the second tribulation spirit treasure is the top. You have heard the Sex Tian Lian always say that your own quality determines the hope of advancing to pure yang. Don't think of being like the Qianquan wine tripod, but can only choose one of the paths to the end. Do you want to become a second tribulation spirit treasure that is completely the same as the Qianquan wine tripod, or only have part of the Qianquan wine tripod's function, but can retain the hope of advancing to pure yang in the future? Choose for yourself." Linglong was suddenly depressed. She didn't have a Qianquan wine cauldron imitation spirit treasure. She didn't want to become a heaven-opening divine artifact like the Qianquan wine cauldron, but she also knew that such a hope was almost hopeless. If she gave up some of its functions and walked the path of specialization, it would instead concentrate all of Linglong's advantages and preserve the possibility of advancing to the pure yang stage. "Well, you are the master, it is up to you to decide." The dark clouds shrouded the valley, and the purple-blue lightning fell into the valley one after another, illuminating Qi Lianying's slightly pale face. Feeling the tightness of Qi Lianying's grip on his arm, Lu Ping chuckled and comforted her. "Don't worry, this is Linglong's second thunder trial after all. It will be more powerful than the first thunder trial you will summon in the future." Linglong snorted coldly and said, "I am just worried about Linglong." However, Lu Ping still felt the strength on his arm lessen a lot. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, although I have several spirit treasures, I only have 2 second tribulation spirit treasures. I will not let Linglong take the risk easily." Moreover, Linglong already had the strength to advance to a second tribulation spirit treasure more than 100 years ago. The reason why it has been delayed until now is that I have been hesitating whether to let her fuse with the Baiying Tower. Moreover, Linglong has accumulated a strong foundation over the years. If there are no accidents, this thunder trial should be more daunting than dangerous." As he spoke, the 8th thunder trial smashed into the valley like a water column pouring down from the sky. Bang! Boom! 2 loud sounds came in succession. Although the 2 were far enough away from the valley, they could still clearly feel the vibration from the ground under their feet. A solemn look appeared on Lu Ping's face. Obviously, the 8th thunder trial had injured Linglong quite badly. Her body, which was floating in the air, should have been smashed to the ground by the power of the thunder trial. However, a muffled buzzing sound came from the valley. Lu Ping's expression relaxed a little. He knew that the thunder trial just now did not cause much damage to Linglong's body. The tribulation clouds in the sky suddenly collapsed and shrunk. Then, the last thunder trial, with almost all the power of the tribulation clouds, directly fell into the valley through the void. With a loud bang, the mountains within a radius of a few miles shook. Countless boulders rolled down from the hillsides around the valley. One of the steeper hillsides directly collapsed, forming a cliff that was more than 10 feet high. "Let's go and have a look." As soon as the 2 arrived in front of the valley, Lu Ping frowned slightly. On the side, Qi Lianying saw Lu Ping's expression and said worriedly, "What's wrong? Did something happen to Linglong?" Lu Ping looked calm and said, "It's nothing. It's just that there are some people who don't have eyes everywhere. In the valley, Linglong's wine cauldron was overturned on the ground. But from the flickering light around her body, it was obvious that she was not seriously injured. However, Linglong, who climbed out of the cauldron, looked much more miserable. Her whole body was emitting green smoke, her hair was standing on end, and her small face was black as if she had just come out from a pile of coal. Qi Lianying chuckled and walked forward to wipe her, but Lu Ping noticed that Linglong was able to exist outside of the wine cauldron. Before Linglong became a second tribulation spiritual treasure, she rarely left her body. Obviously, the thunder trial had reduced Linglong's dependence on her body. However, just as Qi Lianying was about to approach Linglong, a shout suddenly came from behind them. Stop! Qi Lianing's expression changed and he turned around to see a few rays of light descending from the valley. The person in front had a greedy look in his eyes as he stared at Linglong's wine cauldron. He said, "This is the treasure of the flowing cloud pavilion. All of you, get out of here." Qi Lianing was stunned, but when he saw Lu Ping standing at the side without saying a word, he laughed and said, "What a joke. This is a spiritual treasure of the flowing cloud pavilion. Why does it belong to the flowing cloud pavilion now that it has passed the tribulation?" Lu Ping had accompanied Qi Lianing as she traveled the Central Plains. Previously, he had been fooling around with her and had concealed his level of training up to the blood condensation stage. Naturally, he did not attract the attention of the other party. Qi Lianing, on the other hand, had just reached the peak of the early Dharma stage. His Dharma aura surged and attracted everyone's attention. The person who had spoken earlier said confidently, "Nonsense. This is a second tribulation spiritual treasure. How can it belong to an early Dharma minor repairs cultivator like you? This treasure was clearly unearthed here and has undergone its second tribulation. This place is under the jurisdiction of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion, so the treasure that was unearthed naturally belongs to the Flowing Cloud Pavilion." Qi Lianing had been traveling the Central Plains for a long time and naturally knew that the Flowing Cloud Pavilion was a famous and large sect in the Central Plains. However, he did not expect the other party to be so unreasonable. However, looking at Linglong, who had just passed the tribulation, Qi Lianing could understand why these people were trying to take the treasure by force. Although they had the advantage in numbers, Qi Lianing was not afraid. Chapter 14:27. The cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion was attracted by the lightning tribulation and tried to snatch Linglong's wine cauldron. Lu Ping did not say a word. Although Qi Lianing was annoyed and amused at the same time, she strangely did not resent the cultivator's actions. On the contrary, she understood the actions of Flowing Cloud Pavilion to a great extent. Qi Lianing herself was a bandit, and had made a name for herself in the perished land. If she were in the shoes of the cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion, she would have made the same decision to snatch Linglong's wine cauldron. In fact, from Qi Lianing's point of view, this mid-Dharma adept from Flowing Cloud Pavilion had insisted that Linglong did not belong to Qi Lianing, but had attracted the lightning tribulation because the treasure had been unearthed. This behavior was simply too honest. If it had been her, she would have directly claimed that the treasure belonged to Flowing Cloud Pavilion, and they could have just fought over it. There was no need to cover things up and leave room for argument. Even the treasure had been unearthed by itself. Qi Lianing's beautiful eyes darted around as she waved at Linglong and said, "Linglong, come here!" Linglong, who had not yet recovered from the lightning tribulation, was still in a daze and did not know what had happened. When she heard Qi Lianing's call, she stood up and walked shakily to Qi Lianing. Qi Lianing looked at the cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion at the mouth of the valley and laughed mockingly. "You said that the treasure had been unearthed by itself. How is it that the spirit of the item is so familiar with me?" Long before Linglong had walked behind Qi Lianing in a daze, the face of the cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion at the mouth of the valley had already turned red. This mid-Dharma adept was one of the most outstanding disciples of the third generation of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion. It was just that he, who had grown up under the protection of the sect, had not experienced much of the trials and tribulations of the world of practice. He was completely unable to be as cunning as the older adepts who had been through many hardships. However, at this point, it was enough for the disciple from Flowing Cloud Pavilion to fly into a rage out of humiliation. This could be considered as Qi Lianing helping the disciple from Flowing Cloud Pavilion take the step from a rookie to a veteran. "Since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame my Flowing Cloud Pavilion for bullying you." Qi Lianing clapped his hands and laughed. "That's more like it. Otherwise, how could they be so domineering? But if you want to snatch this treasure, you have to ask the owner of the treasure first." The cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion was stunned. He looked at the direction Qi Lianying was pointing at and saw that the so-called target was just a blood condensation realm cultivator, minor repairs. How could he not know that Qi Lianying was just making fun of him? The face of the flowing cloud hall cultivator sank. You're messing with me? Since you fellows want to die, I might as well grant your wish. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly asked, Who is Yun Tian to you? The cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion, who had just gathered his strength, was taken aback, but he still answered, Yun Tian Laozu is my martial uncle. However, the disciple from Flowing Cloud Pavilion quickly realized that the one who had called Yun Tian Laozu by his name was actually this minor repairs from the blood condensation realm. Furthermore, this minor repairs did not even look at them when he spoke. Instead, the aura he exuded caused him to unintentionally answer Lu Ping's question. The disciple immediately felt humiliated. A mere minor repairs from the blood condensation realm? Even his disciple's cultivation was higher than this minor repairs from the blood condensation realm, and this fellow actually dared to speak to him in such a manner. Originally, I didn't want to start a massacre, but who would have thought that you wouldn't know when to stop? Don't blame me for being merciless. The direct disciple waved his hand at Lu Ping from afar. This move of his was called sneaking into the night with the wind. Although the name sounded poetic, it was a ruthless move that killed without leaving a trace. In his opinion, it was a waste to use this move on a blood condensation realm cultivator. But the direct disciple didn't think it was worth it to use this move on a blood condensation realm cultivator. It seems that I still lack self-control. No wonder my martial uncle encouraged me to go out and explore the world. In order to establish a foothold in the cultivation world, strength was the foundation, but it wasn't the only thing. When the direct disciple attacked, he was still sighing in his heart. However, the blood condensation realm cultivator in front of him, who he had already predicted would die, stood there as if nothing had happened. The direct disciple's technique that he had tried so many times before was like a clay ox in the ocean. He had kicked an iron plate. This fellow wasn't even a blood condensation cultivator. The disciple's expression sank. He coldly said, Who are you? Why are you provoking my Flowing Cloud Pavilion again and again? Are you trying to make an enemy out of our sect? Make an enemy out of me? Lu Ping glanced coldly at the Flowing Cloud Pavilion official disciple, not bothering to hide the disdain in his eyes. You're just a little mid-dharma cultivator. Even if Yun Tian were here, he wouldn't dare to speak to me like this. The disciple's expression turned cold. He had just used these words to mock Qi Lianying, but now, Lu Ping had used them back on him. Such arrogance. Old man, I want to see who has the guts to look down on my Flowing Cloud Pavilion. An angry roar came from afar, and a ray of light flew towards the valley from the horizon. The corner of Lu Ping's mouth curled up in a mocking smile. Finally! As the ray of light descended, Yun Tian Laozu strode out. A few Flowing Cloud Pavilion disciples at the entrance of the valley hurried forward to greet him. Yun Tian Laozu was the only one who nodded. His expression was solemn, and he looked at the disciple with a hint of dissatisfaction. Clearly, he was dissatisfied with the disciple's delay in dealing with the matter in the valley. Yun Tian Laozu was considered one of the more famous cultivators in the Central Plains. After the battle at the Nine Mysteries Tower, Yun Tian Laozu had also benefited a lot from entering the Dao Altar world. After a few years of closed-door training, he had quickly pushed his cultivation to the peak of the late Dharma stage. Even the fourth pure yang throne in the history of Flowing Cloud Pavilion was waving at him. Now, the 6 holy lands of the cultivation world were all in trouble. The 2 holy lands near Flowing Cloud Pavilion, Wuxing School and Nine Mysteries Tower, had suffered great losses. Now, Yun Tian Laozu was full of ambition. He wanted to raise Flowing Cloud Pavilion's status in the cultivation world once again after advancing to the pure yang stage. He wanted to become an established sect like Tianxian sect and Tianhui sect. Who was the one who spoke so arrogantly just now? Lu Ping turned around slightly with a smile on his face. He looked at the stunned cultivator in front of him and said, Fellow Yun Tian, how have you been? Lu Tianping. Ancestor Yun Tian exclaimed in shock. Subconsciously, he was about to put up his guard, but then he realized that he would be making a fool of himself in front of his own disciple if he acted so cowardly. So, he tried his best to suppress the fear in his heart, and said solemnly, "What are you doing here? My flowing cloud pavilion has nothing to do with your Zhenling sect." Yun Tian Laozu actually did not care whether his image in front of the sect disciples was ruined because of his panic at the moment he saw Lu Tianping. Because when he shouted the 3 words, Lu Tianping, the flowing cloud pavilion cultivators behind him were already in an uproar. How could they care about the expression on their own Yun Tian Laozu's face? Lu Tianping was the North Sea Water Sword immortal who killed a pure yang fire Luan and fought off a heavenly demon. Several flowing cloud pavilion disciples looked at Lu Ping with fear in their eyes. The direct disciple from flowing cloud pavilion was already drenched in cold sweat. This condensation minor repairs in front of him was actually the North Sea Water Sword immortal who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. He had actually shouted at him and even secretly attacked him, trying to kill him. Thinking of this, the direct disciple felt as if he was walking on the edge of the gates of hell. You are the North Sea Water Sword immortal, but you hid your cultivation and plotted against us. Is it really that fun? Lu Ping pointed at Linglong's wine cauldron in the middle of the valley and said, "That's strange. It was your flowing cloud pavilion that came looking for trouble with me. Why is it that from your tone, it seems that I deliberately came looking for trouble?" Lu Ping paused for a moment, then a smile suddenly appeared on his face. He said, "If you say that I deliberately came looking for trouble, it is not without reason. If I remember correctly, fellow Taoist Yun Tian was one of the people who set up a trap in the Tao altar to kill me, right?" Yun Tian Laozu's expression instantly changed. He smiled bitterly and said, "What happened in the Tao altar was also because of the Wuxing school's bewitchment. I didn't think that the person who was ambushed would be you, Lu Daoyu. Moreover, Lu Daoyu didn't suffer any losses that day. On the contrary, it was great cultivator Gu from Wuxing school who had his cultivation crippled by Lu Daoyu. Oh, so you're saying that if I was the one who suffered losses that day, then I deserved it?" Yun Tian Laozu was stunned and said quietly, "If Lu Daoyu insists on fighting, the old man will accompany you." Lu Ping smiled and didn't say anything. Yun Tian Laozu glanced at the scene in front of him and roughly guessed what had happened. He suddenly turned around and scolded fiercely. "Ignorant things, you can't read and don't know how to touch the signboard. Do you dare to casually offend the North Sea Water Sword immortal?" Lu Ping and Qi Lianing looked at each other secretly. They could see the ridicule in each other's eyes. The other person only said that he had offended them, but he didn't mention anything about stealing the treasure. He spoke highly of Lu Ping, but in fact, Lu Ping was just like the direct disciple of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion who had offended him. They were both third-generation cultivators. The direct disciple hesitated for a moment, then silently stepped forward and said, "I didn't know that Senior Lu was here. I have offended you, please forgive me." This surprised Lu Ping. From Lu Ping's point of view, all the direct disciples cultivated by the sect were arrogant. Expecting them to apologize for him would be worse than killing them. However, this direct disciple of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion was actually willing to put down his pride and apologize. This made Lu Ping take a few more glances at him. Lu Ping's eyes narrowed slightly and he quickly stepped aside. He then smiled and said, "I don't dare. Fellow Taoist Qian, please don't make things difficult for me. We are both third-generation disciples, so you and I can treat each other as equals." Seeing that the matter was over, Yun Tian Laozu felt relieved. He still had a smile on his face and said, "It was my Flowing Cloud Pavilion's fault. Since Lu Daoyu is passing by, why don't you come to my Flowing Cloud Pavilion and stay for a while to make up for the previous offense against Lu Daoyu?" Lu Ping put on a fake smile and refused. "Fellow Taoist Yun, I appreciate your kindness. Everyone please go back. I still have important matters to attend to, so I won't chat with you anymore. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.